Okay, gotcha. I didn't know you were in the
Bu
Matrix.
boom. Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to the stream. I'm joined tonight by Dan,
Hey,
and I'm going to be working on this druid image. I'll zoom out so you can actually look at it. This is the thing I was working on last week. I'm going to continue to work on it. Gonna ink things up in Krita like I've been doing. All of this kind of boring foliage shit. That's what I'm
so
going
it
to be
is a
doing.
druid.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was saying in the chat last week. I was like, this is unironically what I wanted the druid to be in Diablo.
Uh, yeah, I just wanted to make like a weird druid kind of character that's kind of creepy.
Yeah, I don't want to look like a dude who's going to Woodstock. I want to be a twisted old man. Yeah,
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 some freaky old man who hops
yeah,
around.
yeah,
You want it to be like going to the Barbaroi.
absolutely. It's exactly what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Except he turns into the monsters. Hey,
Yeah.
Maddie. Yeah, no Kim. She's resting tonight.
Well,
She's missed.
I told her to hop in here. I sent her a link to the Google Meet we got set up here, but I don't think she's
Hell yeah.
getting my messages. And I called her, so I don't know what she's doing upstairs.
Shout out to
the,
Kim.
she said the toilet wouldn't flush.
Been there
So maybe
before.
there's chaos.
Hey, Riley. What's going on? That's true, Riley. He did look like a Rhapsody of Fire fan. It's absolutely true. He looked like a guy who goes to Opeth concerts.
Yes, exactly. Dream
I was
Theater.
like, yeah, I was like, there he is. I went to high school with that guy. I know him. That's Druid.
Yeah, I wasn't crazy about the druid.
Everything. Once he got some armor on him, he looked pretty good.
Well, you know how everybody was like shitting on the barbarian,
Yeah.
and then that video came out of like what a
How to
barbarian
do.
does with a crit.
Yeah, how to do 65 million damage repeatedly over and over again.
Well,
Yeah.
like the one that specifically that 350,000 damage.
Yeah, it's fucking hilarious.
I was
The
like, oh,
Asmongold
okay.
video was so funny.
I was like, I don't know what I'm doing then, I guess. It's really what it
Yeah.
comes down to is I don't actually know how to play this game.
What the game is going to be after the real thing comes out. I'm sure all the classes are going to be viable.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's going to be
I'm
balance and
sure.
stuff, but
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I'm on board with like I wanted options with the druid. I wanted to look like a creep or
Yeah,
just
I want to look
somebody
like
who transforms into animals.
yeah. I want to look like the little old man in Conan the Barbarian who lives by the seaside. You come to my shack and I go, "Oh, I have secrets for you."
Uh-huh.
I do little rituals with bones and things and turn into animals. Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
want.
I mean, a druid is nothing but a dirty witch.
Exactly.
just a just a dirty witch. That's all it is.
It's a witch without a shack.
Just a nasty old witch.
Yeah.
It's just like
It's
if a witch was homeless.
it's a witch. It's a witch on food stamps. Yeah. It's the druid. It's a witch on food stamps.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a witch at a soup kitchen.
exactly.
It goes, "Hey man,
I
I
mean,
got
I've
kids
met
to feed."
druids. There've been druids in Boston, like when you're
Oh
walking
yeah.
around and they bark at you.
There's a really good druid in that new episode of South Park about ChatGPT. They hire a guy to come get rid of the robot, the AI, and they have a druid in that episode who I think is making fun of the new Horizon game, but I never played it.
Oh, I know what you're talking. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
really good.
yeah. I don't know what his. I'm assuming that's what they're making fun of because it seemed like a specific reference I wasn't getting.
Yeah, I thought it was just supposed to be stupid.
It's like ringing bells and throwing dust on things. I'm like, this feels like it's from something. I just haven't seen it.
I just took it for like a commentary on how scared everybody is of AI that they're gonna go back
Hmm.
to old magic to get rid of it. Something just as dumb.
Yeah. New season of South Park's been better than recent ones. I don't know what's different suddenly, but that Japanese toilet episode was also very good.
Yeah, that was good.
Hey, my father was a druid. That's okay, man. I know a few. I know a few druids.
I had a druid uncle. I've talked about him in the past. His I don't know his druid name, but the way we knew him was Uncle Ronnie. And
Uncle Ronnie, man, the
and
legend.
well, there's a couple. They were both druids. I have two Uncle Ronnies, and the main druid, Uncle Ronnie, he had mental issues, and then he escaped to the forest, and nobody ever saw him again.
As all
So
good druids should.
he disappeared in the woods one time, and nobody ever found him again. I'm pretty sure
Just
they didn't even
because
file a missing persons report
he wasn't a person anymore. He was a squirrel.
because he changed forms.
He changed form. He wasn't a man anymore. So
Yeah, he's a skinwalker now. Is that my Uncle Ronnie or just a shadow on the tree?
is
I
that
don't
the
know.
neighbor's cat, or is that my uncle?
Yeah, he just vanished into the mountains, and nobody went after him.
He could be anywhere. He could be the eagle watching you from the sky, or the mouse beneath your foot.
I mean, how much of a burden do you have to be on somebody where nobody looks for you?
Also, how many of your family members have gone missing into the woods? I feel like this has happened to at least 3 family members you've told me about.
It's a good question. I don't know.
Like you relate to school once because your grandma went to find the bus stop in the woods. I remember that. I remember the Ronnie
She used to escape all the time.
escape.
I remember my mom being like this other Uncle Ronnie wasn't the Uncle Ronnie on her side. It was on my dad's side. And we went down to the cranberry bogs. We were looking for him because he was also like I have two Uncle Ronnies. They were both mentally handicapped. So the Uncle Ronnie on my mom's side, he went down to the bogs, and the bogs get sprayed with pesticides all the time. And my mom and I were just watching him eat pesticide-covered cranberries, and we didn't stop him because we didn't want anything to happen to us. We were just like, okay, we don't know what to do.
Two runs don't make a right.
That's a good name for the 80s movie that we'd make about them.
Exactly.
Where it was still okay to joke about that stuff.
All I'm thinking of, I'm just thinking of a comedy with Chevy Chase and the fat guy.
It's just Weekend at Bernie's, but they're alive. Kinda.
That's great. Hey, Manser. Yeah, it's fun to hang out. I'm working on a ton of stuff. I'm doing some more stuff for Elden Ring for that company I did the previous thing for. I did some work for Final Fantasy, which was a big deal because it's like my favorite IP ever. Did some stuff for them that hasn't come out yet, and some stuff for FanFest. We're getting back to work on our 3rd Steve book. Lots of other stuff going on in the background, but yeah, been busy.
Yeah, Dan and I were debating whether or not to talk about any of the stuff we've been dealing with
Should we?
over the past like half decade.
Let's let chat decide. Chat, do you want to hear us talk about stuff we can't talk about?
Yeah, like we have to talk in like code.
Code. Yeah. Yeah, we have to talk about code.
We're not gonna violate anything. It's not what we're planning on doing.
But yeah. It was super funny doing the Final Fantasy stuff because I was like, my favorite IP, yeah. And then I signed on to it and they were like, can you draw cute little monsters for a tote bag? And I was like, oh, yeah, okay.
So
I'm doing some other stuff in the background, but yeah, it was a fun job.
So Dan and I pitched an original thing years ago. I'm gonna walk a tightrope here. We pitched an original thing years ago. It got picked up, was in this weird state of limbo, and then landed a couple different places, with it culminating in us having attached to this project.
Wait. Hold on.
What?
Before we go any further, we sold this TV show to a TV network,
Yes,
a
we did.
major cable network, like a name everyone in here would recognize, and it was in development, and then a corporation bought that network and absorbed it while we were in development. And everything that was in what's called, well, everything in development went into what's called turnaround, where they said, okay, TV network everyone's heard of, we're buying you because we want your entire catalog to put on our streaming service. And where everything you have that's currently in development, we're putting in turnaround, which means it's now not canceled, but it's on ice. So our dream comes true. We sell a TV show. It gets bought by a TV network. We're developing it. Then a bigger company comes in, buys that network, shuts us down. Nothing happens for 2 years. Then miraculously, a third network that you all would have known of, major international company, comes in and says, hey, we actually want this show. We want to buy it from you, take it out of turnaround, and go sell it somewhere else. And we're like, wow, that's insane. What are the odds that that would happen? Like, again, talking in code, we sold our show to Pepsi. And then Pepsi got bought by Mountain Dew. And then Mountain Dew said, hey, Pepsi, everything you have in development, shut it down. And then 2 years later,
And that was a code red.
Yeah, that was a code red. And then Coca-Cola came to Mountain Dew and said, hey, you know that show that Pepsi bought, that then you bought Pepsi and then you put it in turnaround? We, Coca-Cola, we want to buy that because it's so much and we're going to take it somewhere. So then that happened. Our dream came true twice. And then COVID happened. And then everything in TV got shut down for years. Everything in Hollywood, everything got shut down. So then we're sitting there just collecting option checks, and it goes and it goes and it goes. And then COVID eventually stops. And then Dave Pickup, where eventually we attached to it.
Yeah, so this is the crazy part. We got attached Oscar winners, like directly attached, and famous actor people and all sorts of wild shit. So we're in like meetings with these bigger people, bigger names, whatever. And then after that, it's like we're kind of going like everywhere with this thing.
Our team had across our whole team, we had a famous podcast. We had 2 Oscars. We had, I think, 2 Emmys. And like specific, like a crazy team. Like it was unbelievable. And we had an A-list comedic actor.
Yeah, and basically what it ended up being was that, I mean, really all I'm talking about here, and I don't want to get into any details, but ultimately Dan and I we just want to say we've been doing a lot of stuff for a long time that we haven't been able to say anything about. We still can't really divulge anything.
Yeah.
But we've been in like crazy rooms talking to people we never imagined we'd talk to. Like all these really nuts things have happened.
Yeah.
And ultimately it comes down to like algorithms. If you've seen somebody that I mentioned this to who's kind of in the know on what we're doing, they sent me the scene of the algorithm like board meeting in Barry. And I was like, oh, that's like exactly what happened.
Like literally. I forgot that scene existed until you just said that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's literally what happened.
Yes, if you want an idea of what happened, watch that. Cuz like it's very funny like like the places that we pitched to, they really wanted it. But when it comes to like an algorithmic like computer that dictates what goes where and if things are successful, that algorithm is the only thing that's like standing in our way.
So like
Dan and I have to defeat the Matrix.
So like imagine this feeling of like, let's say you always wanted to work, what's like a dumb company? What's like a dumb thing that isn't what we did that I can use as an example? Like Blockbuster Video. Let's say your entire life wanted to work with Blockbuster Video. You're like, I have this movie, I wrote it. I think Blockbuster Video should exclusively be the people that release this movie. And then you're in a meeting with Blockbuster Video, and it's sitting right in front of you, and you're like, holy shit, you're Blockbuster Video. Everyone knows who you are. This is amazing. You're like a household name. And they're like, yeah, we love you. And you're like, how do you even know who we are? And like, we read all your stuff. We've read your books. We've seen your things. We love your artwork. We love the show. We can't wait to do it. It's a perfect fit. We love you guys. We love the whole team. This is like set. This is one of the strongest pitches we've ever seen. This is fantastic. Super strong lineup. We're fans of everyone attached to it. And then the next day they're like, "Yeah, we passed. We're not really. It's not really for us." Like, what? And it's what?
Yeah.
It's insane.
All
It's
to
like,
all to really say throughout this whole thing is keep working on this. Like even if the stars align and you achieve your ultimate dream goal through somebody else's platform, do not stop working on the things that you work on for you. Just don't stop. Go full throttle as if that stuff doesn't even exist. Like, cuz
yeah,
you couldn't have had a more stacked team than we had. Like, your mind would be blown if you
if I
knew
could
like
compare it,
exactly who was on our team.
if I could compare it to anything, like everyone close your eyes right now and picture your dream like partner. Like if it's a famous guy that you think is super sexy, or if it's some girl you really like, imagine they come to you and they're like, "I want you. I want you real bad." And you're like, "Holy shit, really? Like that's like my dream come true." Like, wow. And they're like, "Yeah, let's start making out." And you start feeling each other up and making out. You're like, "This is amazing. It's actually happening. Oh my god." And then they step away and they go, "You know what? I like you so much. I think I'm going to sign a contract with you. Let's get married." And you're like, oh, "This is amazing. Everything I've ever wanted. Oh my god. This is." Oh. And then right when it's about to happen, they go, "You know what? I'm not feeling it anymore." They just walk out of the room. And then you walk out the door and you're like, "What do you mean you don't feel it anymore?" And they turn around and they go, "You're really great though. Still really handsome. Still really funny. I love you. I just don't want to be with you." And you're like, "Huh?" Anyway, this
Yeah.
is where we are now.
I mean, I just wanted to put that out there that like there's this whole thing that happens with, I don't know, artists, anybody I've ever heard of who sold like intellectual properties or anything, where it's almost like a thing to swing around and be like, "Look at what I did." You shouldn't be like that, because the chances that like we were at like the finish line of a thing,
Yeah.
and then you just kind of go like, "Oh shit."
And
It's
what's crazy is this is what feels even worse. Like me and Dave have fallbacks. Like I'd be lying to you guys if I said we weren't let down by the fact that it didn't end up working out, because like we got to a point where it was basically a sure thing. Like nothing is, but it was as close as something could be. And it was like, "Oh, if we get a TV show, we have total creative freedom. We can do whatever we want because we'll be those guys that made a TV show. Like we'll have money, we'll have a small amount of influence to maybe make other stuff. Like we can at least make some cool merchandise. Like the amount of creative freedom you get from that clout would be super cool to have, because then it's like it's just freedom. You don't have to like you have other people behind you that are like, okay, these guys are proven now. Let's throw some money at them to do this other cool idea." So yeah, that was a letdown. But the worst part of it, we didn't know that other people in the chain of people attached to this thing were basically banking on it happening because it was so close to being a sure thing. So
Oh,
then these
wait, before
people,
you go on, I'm going to black out my screen. Your
sure,
stream didn't die. I'm blacking it out so you don't see NDA work.
yeah.
Go on, Dan.
So basically, these people that we've developed friendships with, and it's not just a normal friendship, it's a friendship where they've been with you through the ups and the downs of this very personal project over the course of 5 years. Like, you're not just friendly in a professional way, you've gone through things together. You've gone through really high highs and really low lows. Now, those people who were banking on this being their like paycheck from now on, or like this being the thing that was going to be the next step in their career, now they're also fucked. And it's like that that feels so much worse, because it's like, holy like you believed in us, and now it's probably not working out the way we hoped it would. And like me and Dave can go make another book or like do our freelance and stuff, but it's like I feel so shit for you guys. Like it's just a weird, I don't know, it's a weird place to be.
Yeah, it's a bummer to let people Well, it's not us letting people down. It's something we can't control at all. Doesn't fall on us. Like we have no responsibility for that because you just are at the whim of something else.
Manser says you guys deserve a Netflix series. We thought so. We thought so.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the thing is, it's not. We're not like done. Like it's not like a
no.
thing where like we're not saying like we had a chance and it's gone. You keep doing these things, and it's very normal to have like a bunch of like wait periods between projects and whatever. But yeah, it's just a bummer. It's just what we're currently dealing with, and we've just been kind of sitting on this thing for so long that we were like, it'd be nice to talk about it for a second.
Yeah. I know we've kind of hinted at it on a few streams, but like
A little bit.
it's it's just a crazy feeling because at first it was like, okay, this is what's really fucking with me. At first, when we sold it to a major TV network like 5 years ago, I was like, this is unreal. Like, I never thought I would do something like this. This is so cool. And I was so happy. And I was like, this is amazing. We're like writing scripts for a TV show. It's literally me and Dave trying to make each other laugh, like our favorite thing to do, and then getting paid for it. And like this, and like they came to us. We didn't even market it. They bought it like sight unseen. Like, this is nuts. And then when that major corporation came in and bought that network out, that was like the lowest low I've ever felt. Because it was like that happened, then my mom got cancer. And it was like boom, boom. And it was like, okay, lowest point in my like entire life. Like that hurt. And then I was like, okay, when the good news started coming back after COVID, that maybe it wasn't dead and like, they were going to attach this Oscar winning team to it and this famous A-list comedic actor wanted to play the main character. Like, when all this news started coming, I was like, okay, whatever happens, don't get your hopes up.
But
Because last time you
here's
got
the
your
thing
hopes
that
up,
happens with
really
those
hurt.
things. Like
Yeah.
people, if you know anything about like Hollywood people or agents or anything like that,
Yeah.
they always try to keep things kind of like grounded for you. Like don't expect like anything too crazy. Like this is
Hmm.
great news, but it's not that. We were getting things like I've never seen anything like this before. Like
Yeah.
something's gonna happen. Like
Yeah.
things that they should never tell somebody.
We were getting feedback from people in Hollywood that were like, we've never seen a lineup this strong. You've got 2 Oscars, multiple Emmys, a successful podcast, and 2 huge Kickstarters. Well, other things behind this project. Like, me and Dave have done stuff. We've worked on like things. So like if you do a Kickstarter and you go to a TV pitch, that's part of the pitch. You go, we're not just 2 guys that wrote a script, we're 2 guys that wrote these books and then we wrote a script. Like, we've done stuff. We have this guy on the team who has the successful podcast. He networks with all these other people in the comedy world. That's part of the package. It's not just the script, it's everything you've ever done in your career adds to that. And the team we had, the amount of books the team had written collectively, the amount of Oscars and Emmys and awards the team had, the amount of experience and networking, it was a huge package. And we were getting told by people in Hollywood, like, we've never seen something this strong go to market. Like, and that's a big deal because they're not supposed to say stuff like that. So you think they mean it. And I'm sure they did. That's the thing that sucks the most, is I'm sure they did mean it.
Yeah,
But
I never got my hopes up. I kept imagining that it wouldn't go. I mean, I was just trying to live in that space. I was like, I don't want to live there and be like, oh, this is going to work out, and then it doesn't. I'll believe it when it
Porfirio,
actually happens.
Porfirio, you're in the chat.
What do you do?
Skull and
Oh,
Shark
yeah.
is something me and Dave did. And then we were going to make a comic out of it. We tried to, and we were like, we don't know enough about making comics to do this the way we want to yet. So we stopped. Laserhawk made an awesome album based on it that was going to release with the comic, but we never ended up finishing it.
Yeah, the
So,
script was finished,
yeah.
but we were like, the script is only like, all right. It wasn't like what we ultimately wanted.
Yeah.
And it was like our first huge script that we wrote together.
Laserhawk's awesome. We were very early on. We were just like, imagine this as a video game and like, what would that sound like? And he absolutely nailed it.
Yeah, Dan and I went to like what we would do is we would go to this bar in Boston like every day,
Mm,
and we'd write for like hours just at the bar. We'd write
yeah,
Skull and Shark and
just order coffee and write.
just pace around the bar coming up with stuff.
Yeah, it was really fun. By the way, if you ever want to get work done, go to a bar early in the day when there's nobody there and just carve out a corner and just order coffee, and like you've basically got the whole place to yourself. You can get up, you can walk around, you don't have to worry about other people. Like it's cool because they're open, but there's not a ton of people. It's a good vibe. It's like being in a library, but you don't have to be quiet.
Porfirio, yes, Skull and Shark comes from us. Then the Laserhawk album was a collaboration between us. Laserhawk is actually one of the only people who's ever read the script
Yeah. Oh,
outside
yeah,
of
that's
us.
true, huh? He's like maybe the only person besides like Kim.
Yeah, there's stuff in the Skull and Shark album, like things that are said in the album, like when there is voiceover stuff, that's from the script.
Yeah. Yeah. 10 years ago. Jesus.
Yeah, and then who else said something? Daryl says, "Do you think they passed because of the creative freedom you wanted, assuming they would have been enforced in the project?" No,
No.
actually, it's. I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but basically, everybody that we were like pretty solid with pitching to, they wanted it. It just comes down to algorithmic stuff, higher ups, like all that sort of thing. So people went to bat for us at places. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like people told us no in general. Like everybody was fighting for us, which was very nice. Like everybody's very nice. And
Yeah.
it's again, it's not over. We're still doing it. Like and it there's going to be like, you know,
So
a time for it, but
supposedly the reason it didn't work out, and you never know if this is true when they tell you this or if it's just coping, but like I'm assuming it's true because they were so invested in it for so long. um Basically when COVID happened, all of the movie connected studios, every studio, like Sony has a TV division, they have a movie division. Disney has streaming, they have TV, they have movies, they have this, that, the other thing. Every network has branches. Basically they all shut down their movie branches and they put everything into streaming because
well,
nobody was
and
able to go to theaters.
specifically animation. They put everything in animation because it was something that
Yeah.
people could do from home. It was like,
Yeah,
you
you
know,
didn't need a
you're not going to
set.
be on set and you're not going to need actors there. So a
Yeah.
ton of animated properties were
So
purchased like
yeah,
in,
over those two
that whole
years,
period.
huge amount of animated stuff got purchased, huge amount of stuff went into production. Some of it got canceled, some of it bombed, but the general overview is that they flooded the market with a wide range of bad to mid animated stuff that very quickly got canceled. And then after COVID happened, every studio, I mean, Disney was the most famous one, but like they fired so many people that they hired during COVID because they needed remote workers to do animated and special effects based stuff. They hired up all these people to get this stuff to streaming. And then the second they didn't need to do that anymore, all those people got axed. So we entered the market with this project at like the worst possible time because all this animated shit had just been canceled. All these COVID things that were in development all got axed at the same time, and all the studios just went through like 2 years of layoffs. And it's like, hey, do you want this animated thing? It's high concept and blah blah blah. So like, the reason we're being told it's not working is that, and like, yeah, I'm always gonna have the part of my brain, the imposter syndrome thing, that's like, no, it's just because it sucks and they're being nice. But like, I legitimately don't think that's true in this case because so many people pushed it for 5 years. Like it wasn't just us,
Yeah.
but yeah,
But the plus side is we just get to do other things now for a little while at least.
it's nice
And
to have closure, even though
yes.
it's not happening. Like I don't know if anyone in chat can appreciate this, but like this, me and Dave used to talk about this thing from this book called Getting Things Done, the concept of open loops, where if you have a project in your head and you're not actively working on it or recording it in any way to get it done incrementally, it's an open loop in your head. And the more the loop is open, the more energy it takes away from you. The less productive you are, the more fatigued you are, the more stressed you are. So ideally, at any given time, you're either finishing all the tasks in your head to close the loops, or if they're huge tasks like making a book or a TV show, you're taking incremental steps and you have the peace of mind at night knowing, okay, I did what I had to do today so that it will be finished soon. With this, that concept didn't really apply because we were constantly at the whim and the mercy of all these other third and fourth parties. So you just had this open loop of maybe my whole life will be amazing, or maybe nothing will change, open for all time for 5 years, where you have no control over it. It's just this huge maybe that where it's like you're constantly thinking the greatest thing ever could happen or the worst thing ever could happen, and you've done the work and there's nothing, you're just waiting. And the stress that that causes, especially when it goes up and down and up and down, and great news, bad news, great news, bad, really great news, we Oscar winning actors, bad news, like the amount of stress that causes, I can't even describe. It's like a feeling I've never felt before. But
It's
yeah.
just yeah, it's just like a control thing for me. I have a problem with stuff that's like completely out of my control. Just being like, oh, I don't get to say anything.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get to like make. I can't do and I can't take an action that's going to move the needle in a direction.
Yeah, it's also like, especially coming from freelance, like we have the problem solving brain, which I'm sure a lot of people in chat can relate to, where it's like, okay, if you don't like the piece, just tell me what you don't like about it and I'll fix it in a revision and send it. Like, you want to make the client happy. Like, okay, like, sure, yeah, we're good at feedback. That's freelance art in a nutshell. Like, tell us what you don't like. We'll adjust the notes, we'll redo it, and we'll get it back to you. And in this case, that's not something that happens. They're just like, maybe. And you're like, well, what do you, can we make it better for you? And they're like, no. And you're like, well, it clearly you don't like it, or you'd be saying yes. And they're like, no, no, we love it. And you're like, okay, well, then are you going to buy it? And they're like, maybe. And we're like, well, how can we get you to want to buy it more? And they're like, you can't do anything. It's perfect. And we're like, then why aren't you buying it? And it's just this insane infinity loop of like, the people in charge aren't actually in charge because even the people that can buy it don't have permission to buy it unless they go through like 20 other people. So yeah, it's, I don't know. It's a feeling I can't even describe.
Moral of the story is, no matter what happens to you, keep making your own stuff.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
And the time we spent on this, waiting for it to happen, we could have done two more books.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's very strange to think about it that way, but yeah. Anyway, I did see a question earlier. I forget who it was from. I don't want to ignore any questions in chat. Someone said, what do you think the ratio is when you're doing paintings like this of making it up as you go from your head versus using direct reference?
Oh, uh, I use reference for the bird and the chimpanzee dude, but I also made up a bunch of stuff on both of them. So when it comes to like a very specific animal or something like that, I'll use reference just to make sure I get it down. But if I, if I'm doing something kind of like fantasy related that's not tied to like an animal or like a very specific person or something, then it's, almost entirely from my imagination.
But yeah,
Orcs, I don't really look up anything. Also, I've done enough reference studying that I don't need to constantly look at ref unless I'm feeling like, you know, insecure about something. I'm like, I gotta really like back this up with something.
fair. But yeah, so now we're in this weird spot where it's like we have this script that everybody likes. We have a team of successful people that are attached to it, but we don't know how long they're going to be attached to it because they're going to have other offers to do other things. And it's like, obviously that's going to be the case. So we're just kind of like, it's very weird. It's like, because some of the feedback we got was this is perfect, but we can't do it right now. Maybe in a couple years, once the COVID stuff cools down, we think we could do it, but like we can't commit to anything. And it's like, holy shit, are you just like you're just asking me to just let time pass and just see what
Yeah.
happens? That's insane.
But we're gonna like Dan was saying, we're working on our third book. We're gonna timetable that out, get that out.
Mm,
I mean, the reality is that, you know, people can like you for doing a certain thing, and then they want like a piece of it somehow,
mm,
whatever, or bring you on, you know, to like Dan and I have been brought on to do like other projects, and
yeah,
it's like that's all well and good, but you always have to return to the thing that you got recognition for. It's like because that's the thing that got you
yeah,
anywhere. So that's the place where you can return and just flex that muscle again and
yeah.
prove yourself again, and just be like, all right, this is the reason that this
And
thing
luckily,
was purchased.
luckily, using a combination of Midjourney and OpenAI, we can feed our first two Steve books to it and make a new book every 6 months. So,
You imagine if we did that? It'd be such a boring comic.
it'd be amazing.
That's the problem with like AI stuff is like how derivative it is. It's
Yeah,
like it has for all like the amazing like fascinating things it can do. You know, you still need to inject a lot of personality into that stuff.
yeah. Hmm. Fuzzy Whisper says every orc is perfect, no matter how poorly drawn.
It's
Yes,
true. Same thing with goblins.
very accurate, man. Kyle Martin says, one time the studio I worked at partnered with another studio in a kids show. I'd get a role as an animator and I'd be part of the writing team. And the week after I submitted my first episode script, we found out that the partner studio didn't actually have the rights to the show they were producing and were being
Whoa,
sued by a third studio who owned the rights. Holy shit, dude.
that's wild.
That's wild. Did the liability go all the way down the chain or did it stop with the owner? Did they like try to sue you and all the other people doing stuff, or was it just heads of the company? That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's
Oh, I can
something.
also I can also announce because this got released on Instagram last week. Me
Mm.
and Dave did a script for Magic the Gathering with Boom Comics, so that'll be coming out relatively soon.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it's a little one shot comic they're doing with Planeswalkers characters, but that was really cool. They were fun to work with.
Yeah, they've been asking us to do something with them for a while.
Yeah.
They're the people who originally wanted Starvale,
Mm.
and I
Oh
was
yeah, I
just
forgot
like,
they offered on Starville.
I don't want to do that really.
Yeah,
And they
not
were
at
like,
that
okay.
time.
It just wasn't a great term for like in case it was picked up because that was during the boom of like
Yeah,
during you know no pun intended literally during like that comics boom when everything was being bought up for film.
yeah. If anyone has any questions about anything, feel free to post in the chat. I'll grab them. Daryl Austin says, "Thank you both for being open about this. Fail or succeed, we learn a lot from you." Yeah. I mean, you know, we
I
want to
just
talk about, but
it,
I wish I could tell you all the details because
yeah,
it's way crazier.
I wish we could say everything, but it's mostly just this thing of like maybe this is just like a mindset I've always had being like a freelancer. But just because somebody, like, even this applies to everything, not just this. It's like, even if you get a studio job as a concept artist, like, you think you've achieved that goal, right? Don't ever rely just on that place to give you what you need to survive. It's like you're still going to need to work on your skills outside of that job. You're
Yeah.
still going to need to build up your portfolio outside that job. Don't rely solely on that job to give you everything that you need to survive. It's like if that place goes under and all your stuff is locked behind a wall, an NDA wall, or a game doesn't come out and all your artwork is stuck somewhere, it's like you're going to need that portfolio to survive. So
Oh my god, dude, that
you have
38
to keep
Studios
working.
thing.
Yeah.
I think about that sometimes and what that did to like Sean Murray and all those people. That was
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
But it's just super important. It's like you keep working on things. It's like even though like and again, like this is one of those like we I wanted to talk about it just because it is like as best as you could get with something along those lines. It's like literal Oscar winners and famous actors, comedic actors and stuff like all attached to a project, and it's already purchased by a huge studio and then selling it and whatever. It's like, and that still didn't work that way, not yet anyway. It could still go. I mean, everybody really liked it, but even so, it's like I think I let my guard down just a little too much with that being like, oh, this is actually feeling pretty good, and just
Yeah.
thinking like, oh, you could just coast on that and
We
not
literally, I
have to
think
do too much.
the night that fucked me the hardest, the night that just, the night, looking back at it, the night where I made the mistake and
You
the
turn
reason
the
why
corner.
the night I turned the corner and the reason why it hurts the way it does now is the night we got the phone call from a established Hollywood person, and they said, "Guys, you need to go out and celebrate tonight because this is a big deal.
Yeah,
Take a minute for yourselves. Get this meal, have a drink, and celebrate because this is a huge milestone." And I
you
was
guys
like,
did it.
"You guys did it." I've never heard this person talk like that before. They've been in Hollywood for longer than I've been working, and like that was a huge deal. I was like, "Holy shit, this feels legit." I think that was the night for me where I officially fucked up
Yeah,
and
you
started.
crossed over into personal mode.
I
Got
crossed
too
into
personal.
hope.
Yeah.
I crossed into hoping, and
But
yeah,
just you keep working on the thing that got you to where you are, regardless of what that thing is. You always work on it. Just let it be a lesson. Just let it be a lesson from two
yeah,
people that got the two Icaruses, Icarai, the Icarai
Icarai,
boys.
yeah, the Icarai boys. Them Icarai boys done it again. They
Yeah,
flew
they
too close to the sun and got their wings melted.
yeah.
What's falling out of the sky over there screaming? That's them Icarai boy.
Oh, that's Dan.
They done. Yeah, them Icarai. Ah,
Just
I was so
blasting towards the
close.
ground.
Darkstorm99 says, "If we ever see more Starville in the future, what form would it take?" I mean, they're kind of seeing
Porn.
more with that comic porn, that comic you were doing with like the cat guy and the kid, right?
Yeah, I think the thing that I just you know like that magic comic that's coming out, like that's aside from like the base concept, like that whole thing is just written by Dan. Like Dan wrote that whole thing, and like we just went over it after Dan wrote it. It's not like how we did Steve, so that was like Dan flexing that muscle, and
Wait,
I
which
want
thing was this?
the magic thing.
Oh yeah,
Like
right,
the
right.
Magic
Yeah,
the Gathering comic that's going to come out is almost like it's just like entirely Dan, and I just kind of like went over with him,
yeah,
and we did the initial concept together and built out like what structurally what could happen. Like that's
yeah,
basically it. But like with Starvale, I was like, I want to figure out like me doing it, like the same way you're doing that. It's like I want to like flex that muscle too, and build things out. So that's kind of how I'm treating Starvale now. Just doing a
yeah.
bunch of short stories to work on that.
Um, Fran says, "This may have been asked before, but I'd like to know the inspiration behind Starville, thoughts on designing the main characters." Well, Dave came to me and he said, "Dan, I just saw this Daft Punk music video about this band playing instruments in outer space, and I think this could be the next big thing." I
Yeah,
said, "Dave, you're crazy. Dave, you're nuts. They're never going to buy it." Lo and behold, they did.
it's true.
No, I'm just kidding.
It's very true.
I remember when you started Starville, all the internet hate where people were like, "Do your rendered portraits. No one cares about line art." I remember that. But yeah,
Well, it's just pulling out of orbit of your bubble. You're in your bubble for a long time where people expect you to do a certain thing,
what was
and
the
then
inspiration
you get
behind
out of it.
making that switch and doing Starville? Because you were at that point you were like the hyper realistic portrait guy, and then you started doing these like very 70s sci-fi line art drawings.
I mean that's why. It's because I was bored of doing the same thing over and over again. I was too set in my ways. I was living kind of fear based of only doing things I was comfortable doing. And that's just the wrong approach. I knew that all of my problems in my artwork stem from my lack of drawing ability. And I was like, I just need to simplify everything I'm doing and go back to like core drawings and find a way to channel that into something where I'll invest a lot of time and get better at it. So Starville was the beginning of that. And then after that is like Steve and everything else. But yeah, Starville was just me feeling inadequate and also being like, I need to get out of this just like very narrow field of view.
I also remember a conversation we had back then where you were like, I'm really frustrated because I have more idea because your realistic, hyper realistic rendered paintings were taking you like weeks to finish sometimes.
Yeah.
And you were like, I have more ideas that I want to get out in my head than I'm able to get out with this rendered style. And you were like, I'm worried if I do sketches and then come back to them later, I won't want to come back to them because I will have switched styles or improved. And eventually you got to a point where you're like, I think I just have to make a new style for these ideas because you were like, otherwise I'm never going to, I have too much I want to get out and I can't get it out quick enough.
Yeah, I needed to have a style that could move at the pace of like all of the ideas that I wanted to do at the time. Which I was like, I need to do something else. I was like, I need to get better at just drawing. I need to not be like just stuck in this place where the only the only time my artwork looked good is when it was rendered the shit out of. It's like that was the only time it looked like finished. And I needed to be good enough where a drawing looked good rather than it just being a painting, because that was my insecurity, was I over rendered the crap out of everything to hide all of my flaws.
Yeah.
So I needed to escape that for sure.
W. Casso 7 says, did you guys at least get some compensation during the Hollywood process, like a retainer? Don't get me wrong, we made a lot of money off it because when someone buys an option for a TV show, they have to pay you and they have to pay to renew it. And there's a whole bunch of other fees attached. So over the course of the 5 years, we made decent side income off it. But yeah.
Yeah, that was fine. It's just more or less like you want the the fruit of your labor is the thing itself. It's like I don't care about the money. I just want the thing to exist.
Like we said earlier, we could have done 2 more books in the time it took us working on that. And if we had done those books, we would have made 20 times the amount we made from the option deal.
Yeah.
That being said, if the option had gone through and the show got made, we would have made more money than we've ever seen in our lives. So like that's kind of the risk. It's like, do you want to risk the lottery or do you want to do your thing?
Again, it's not over. Like this
it's not over.
Something that's, hopefully going to just happen because we have so many people batting for us that it's like it'd be weird if nothing happened.
Well, also with every new project we do, it's more of like, who are these 2 dudes that did these 3 things, these 4 things, these 5 things. Like the more stuff you do, the more eyes are going to be on you, the more chances you'll have to have that thing be seen by the right person.
Right. And the more people that are already like aware of you and waiting for whatever you're going to do next, the better your chances are.
Lem says, Dave, what medium do you recommend to learn how to paint? I'm using watercolor, but I think it is too much hard even to begin with.
I liked watercolor just to like slowly build it. I didn't use it the way like other people use it. I use it the way Paul Bonner uses it, where it's kind of more like a gouache, but it's like in between, where I'm just kind of like layering paint on top of it. So like I'm not doing like watercolor paper and letting it bleed all over the place and wetting the page and all that shit.
Yeah. Porfirio says, for attracting commissions, do you recommend reaching out directly to possible clients? I'm trying to leave my comfort zone and have a more active role in setting up my future. That's what I have been struggling with lately, getting commissions. Yeah, I mean, the best advice for that is to pretend you already have the job you want and just do it as if you already had it. Don't wait to get it, because then you're actively building a portfolio that the people who you want to hire you will want to see. So like if you want to work for World of Warcraft, you should be pretending you already have that job. Stuff like that. But
yeah, you should already do the work. It's like It's that thing of don't wait for people to figure out you could do something because they never will. Like nobody's
Yeah.
going to be like, "Oh, I see what they did with this. I bet they'd be a good fit for our thing." It's like that's your
Yeah.
ego. That's your ego thinking that because that's not
There's
real.
there's also, like, we can't state this enough. The power of networking is huge. Like,
Yes.
yes, you should reach out to clients directly, but also reach out to people that work for those clients because number one, you might make some really good friendships with other people because, like, right off the bat, you have a higher percentage of having stuff in common with a person who's already working the dream job that you want to have because it was their dream job too, probably. So, like, number one, you might make a really good friendship. Number two, they're going to have tons of information on how to go from where you're at point A to where they're at point C or D. Like, so
Hmm.
that's also great. And number three, when you do want to get an in at that company, you've got somebody on the inside who can go to bat for you and be like, no, I've been talking to this person for like a year. I gave them advice on like what we do. Like, they're cool. Like, I think they'd be a good part of the team. Because another thing, depending on the job, your skills aren't always the only thing that matters. Whether or not you're a good fit for the team is something people take really seriously. If you have pre-existing relationships with people on the team, you're more likely to get hired than a more skilled person nobody knows. But yeah,
It's very true.
networking. Start reaching out to people that work for the people you want to work for, and start getting to know what their life is like, what the work is like.
But also,
Yeah.
if you want to work in, I gave this tip to an artist who's like a student the other day, asked me this, which I was like, oh, I've never thought about it this way. But I was just kind of like brainstorming ideas. And I was thinking about like, what could you do right now, given, your current place as just like a student artist? It's like if you want to work on video games, it's like you can say the thing of like, yeah, pretend you have the job already and just work like that. It's like, yeah, you could do that. But my tip, which I thought was definitely applicable to other artists, look for teams that are in really early stages of developing their game on Steam and
Mm,
contact them and ask if they need an artist. Because chances are they don't know how to hire an artist, they don't know where to look, or the artists they think they're like too far outside of like their pay grade, whatever. Like they can't afford them. It's like, and reach out to those people who need artists for their projects and ask if there's an opportunity for you to work with them on concepting or
yeah.
something. Like, just don't wait to get the triple A job, is basically what I'm saying. Start actively working on real projects on smaller teams that have limited budgets but need help.
And you can make that stuff happen quick. I mean, I used to lecture. I was like a guest lecturer at Art Institute of Boston and Lesley University up in Cambridge, and I would do incoming students and tell them what to expect and maybe why you should be in art school or not go to art school. That was stage one, and stage two was outgoing students of okay, you're leaving the college bubble. How do you get a real job? And one of the students I had a long conversation with. His name's Kev Fang. You can go follow him. He was like, "How do I get into Magic the Gathering as fast as possible?" And we went over how to take the portfolio he had to that, and he did it in 2 years. He just got his first Magic cards like last week. So like, you can do it fast, but like, you just need to like talk to people, network, figure out like how do I go from point A to point B, and just kind of stick with it. But like, yeah,
Yeah, you got to get creative with it. Like again, I always think it's important to think in terms of a ladder progression rather than some ultimate goal like that I'm going to just jump from A to Z right away. Like think of the ladder to your goal. Think of how you can actively build your portfolio towards that goal and get paid. It's like you're
mm-hmm.
getting paid to do fantasy work. Like if you want to work for Magic, find all the companies that hire fantasy artists, all the like, not AAA video games, like all that stuff that's in that realm that needs artwork, but isn't these huge companies with a ton of competition, so that you
Yeah,
can sharpen your skills enough and have the portfolio and experience so that when you get into doing Magic, you're not blindsided by things and you have the proper credentials to get that job. Like that's really important.
Kyle Martin says Dan already bought the Ferrari frowny face. Yeah, literally that. I was packing my bags and I was going, see you later, guys. I'm going to Hollywood. I don't hang around with losers like you anymore.
I was making believe that nothing was happening at all that whole time. I was
As
just working
always.
on other stuff.
As always, Dave chose wisely, and I chose the path of chaos. Now we can give you both perspectives through his success and my failure. Let's see. What's a realistic monthly income for a concept artist illustrator? Don't hear a lot of numbers out there. If you're
50,000.
salaried, yeah. If you're it depends. The real answer is it depends on the city. If you're living in San Francisco, it's going to be higher because the cost of living in San Francisco is fucking insane. So, like, a $50,000 job in Boston, I got offered the same job in San Francisco, and it was 85. And I was like, oh my god, that's a huge increase. Then I talked to my friends that lived there, and they were like, no, it's not, because you're going to be spending 30 grand a month on rent. 30 grand a year on rent. And I was like, really? And like, yeah, it depends. Number one, if it's not working from home, it's going to depend where you are. If you're working overseas, Singapore or something, it might be less, but that's because cost of living there is going to be
No,
much cheaper
Singapore is very expensive.
or high. I don't know which cities correlate with which.
I was gonna say Singapore is like.
Is Singapore one of the big ones?
It's like super expensive.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to depend on the city. Something in New York is going to be cheaper than something in San Francisco. San Francisco is going to be more expensive than something in LA, but LA is going to be more expensive than, or less expensive than New York. Like anywhere from 50 to 100 is going to be starting salary for a concept artist if you're working full time on a game or a movie. It's probably going to be somewhere around 70. If you're a senior AD working at like a AAA video game studio, you can get into the six figures. But yeah, it's going to be around 70 typically.
You know, it's funny about that. I'm like so out of the loop on that stuff. It's like I'm just like, oh yeah, right. Inflation, like, shit has changed.
It's wild. It's really wild. If you're an illustrator, that's probably not a salaried job, so your monthly income is going to depend on how many clients you have and how regular the work is. If like Magic cards pay a flat rate, so you can basically multiply it out and go, okay, if I get one card a month, every month I'll make it this and that. I have this other client that pays me this, add that to it. You can kind of do the math that way, add in side income from prints or whatever else and kind of figure it out. That's a little tougher because you have to kind of decide what your income is going to be because it's up to you how hard you want to push it. For salaried jobs like concept artists, though, average is going to be 70, 75, but it could be as low as like 45, 50, could be as high as 100 to 120. It's going to depend where you're at and how high your role is in the team.
Yeah. How much value do you bring?
Yeah. I know one of the top concept artists in the entire industry is making like 165, but he's the head of a team at a major studio, and that's the highest I've heard for a salary. There's more money on the side that they make, but that's the highest salary number I've heard for a concept artist on a team.
That's not true, dog.
For video games?
Look at me. I was offered 275.
For what?
Shout out.
No, actually, no, I can't. Yeah, never mind.
You can't say.
I can't say what it is. Yeah.
I denied it just because I couldn't possibly have done it.
Yes, but also, did you have to move for that?
No.
Okay, then yes, that's the highest I've heard then. Because I don't think who I'm thinking of. I don't think who I'm thinking of crossed into the 200s because that number is from about 4.5 years ago. But it might be higher now.
I don't actually know anything as far as I was just kind of like shot high for that, but
I'm still surprised they agreed to that number.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised you turned it down. Let's
because
see.
I'm the Joker.
As far as the question, though, yeah, you definitely are. Gotta cause some chaos. Gotta mix it up.
Burn all the money.
Um, as far as the question, though, yeah, it's it's gonna depend on a lot of factors, but I'd say plan on 70
Yeah.
if you're a concept artist at a studio. You also get benefits typically because you're full time, so like insurance and stuff. So you got to factor that into. Um, Fuzzy Whisper says, "I'm fully prepared to enter into a parasocial relationship with an animated character, so I'm depending on Dave to take Starville to the next level." That's good incentive. Man, you remember how rich we thought we were going to be when NFTs came out before we realized that NFTs were like evil?
Oh yeah.
I remember the night the Beeple article came out. You called me and we were like, "Dude, we can do real life Pokemon. We're gonna make them. We can design these little monsters. We can sell them on the blockchain. We're gonna be billionaires." And I was like, "Oh my god!" And then like within a week, the internet was like, "Actually, don't do this." We were like, "Oh man,
And we were like, oh,
fuck,
okay. What it
fuck,
was too good to be true. All right.
damn it." Yeah,
I kind of figured, but
we brainstormed so many ideas that night. We were like, "We can do this. We can do this. We can do this." Man, I remember we were laughing because we were like, "Oh my god, it's gonna happen. People are gonna start selling waifus. There's gonna be a digital sex market. This is insane." Which I think did kind of happen.
absolutely.
It's so fucking funny. Wasim says he enjoys your line art style more, to be honest.
Thanks.
So do I. But then when he does his line art style, I go, "I kind of like your rendered work." Gotta keep Dave guessing.
Well, you can get better at one or the other, you know. And
Yeah.
it's like I'm I'm with you on that, but the in the same way, I'm talking about like the reason I started doing line art in the first place is because I wasn't thrilled with the fact that I couldn't draw, and then when I started to get some form of like success in that, I was like, oh, okay, I need to go back and sharpen up my painting ability. Like I need my paintings to feel in its, not like literally the same, but just good in the same way.
I think I know the answer to this, but Voodoo is asking, "What actions have you taken to avoid getting your work stolen?" I remember several years ago it was constant. I, I think the answer to this is you just stopped caring.
Yeah, the answer is to ignore it. The answer is to go,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, if you look up my stuff on like Etsy stores or anywhere really, like my stuff is stolen constantly.
Yeah.
It's just you would need to do it full time to like actively chase after people who are stealing your work. And at the end of the day, you lose money doing that. It's like then that becomes like what you do rather than being an artist making things. So it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's all it comes down to.
If you work for, I mean, this is one of those weird things where like 0.1% of artists have this. Some illustrators, mostly traditional illustrators, have an agent, and the agency takes care of that for you, and they like sue people and stuff on behalf of you and give you a cut. But like almost no one uses an agency. I think that like Richard Solomon agency is like the only art agency in like the country. Um, but yeah, other than that, it's a full time job. My stuff was getting stolen for slot machine games on iPads years ago, and I remember it was infuriating. But it's like, what are you going to spend your whole time trying to shut it down or not?
Yeah, it's just not worth it.
Um, Mr. Ken says, "Do clients ever pencil you in for jobs?" Pencil in quotations. "I make storyboards for ad agencies. They do it all the time. Sometimes they cancel. Is this normal? Because I find it annoying." What is that? So
Pencil you in.
are you asking if clients are like, "Oh, Dave would be great for this Marvel cover. Let's just assume he's going to do it." Like, is that what you're asking? I know there's a delay in the chat, but that's how I'm reading it.
Yeah, I'm curious what that means too.
Let's see. If you book them, they will come. Yeah. Yeah, game jams can be super educational. Yeah, Joshua Meehan. If you're doing game art experience, going to those and networking is a good idea. Manser, yes, art school is largely unnecessary today, which is what I told almost all the students I talked to. So if you're going, I said if you're going here, go here for a different reason. Like there's valid reasons to go to school, but don't go to art school for that reason.
Well, it's like don't expect that you're going to get everything you want from this.
Yes, art
You're
school
still
is
going to need to supplement everything that you do here with a
yes.
ton of legwork online.
Going to art school will not get you a job unless it's working at that art school. That's it.
And you also have to keep in mind, like going back to kind of like, you know, like talking less about like big picture concept art stuff. You have to stop thinking of like the classroom as your measure of good, because I think sometimes being in a place like that, unless it's a really great place surrounded by like incredible artists or whatever,
Yeah.
you can judge yourself based off of the people around you. And I think that that's not great. Like you want to really look at the whole world and not just like, am I doing good in my classroom? It's like if you're serious about getting a job in art, it's like you need to be consistently like keeping up with everybody else. It's like always keeping in mind what's possible. Like looking at other artists being like, oh right, it's not unreasonable for me to, you know, hope to do this type of thing. And you know, aim for that.
The moment that clicked for me, I was a junior in art school, and I wanted to do fantasy art and concept art and stuff, and all the professors at the college were like, "There's no future in this. This is a fad. Don't do it. You're throwing your life away." Blah blah blah. And I was like, I really don't think that's true. Like, I actually know that's not true. So I went to this workshop, the concept art workshop in San Francisco, and I talked to like all the industry leading people. I met Justin Sweet, Vance Kovacs, Marco Derjovic, Wes Burt, all these luminaries of the industry that have worked on all these movies and books and video games and huge projects. Just everyone you could ever want. Greg Manchess was there doing an oil painting for National Geographic. It was just mind blowing. And I recorded all this stuff, and I took tons of notes. And I came back, and I sat down with the people at the school I was going to, and I was like, I just met all these famous artists who are doing all this contemporary modern stuff, and this is what they said. And they looked at me and they said, "Well, they're wrong." And that's when I was like, "Oh, this is just a bubble. This is just a little hug box you guys have constructed to not feel bad. That's all. This college has no bearing on the outside world whatsoever." And that's basically when I completely checked out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important to kind of assess where you are.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, okay. I'm going to need to do a lot of work.
Did Hollywood approach you about licensing, or did you guys shop your property? No, they came to us. An agency called us. A few agencies called us. The first one was really funny because they were like, guys, this hot new movie, Sausage Party, came out with Seth Rogen, and there's a real hunger in the industry for raunchy adult comedies with adult language. Seems like you guys' bag. And we were like, no, we're good. And they were like, we have an all-star lineup for a raunchy adult comedy with humor and bad words. And they were like, we're going to make you $1 million. And we were like, no, we're good. And they said, you know what? I think I figured out your problem. You guys are allergic to making money. And we
That's
were like,
literally what they said on the phone call. And Dan and I started laughing.
That's not a joke. She literally said, I think I figured out your problem. You guys are allergic to making money. So we started laughing, and she said, we'll convince you. Let me send out my assistant to show you a good time. And I was like, sounds like a prostitute. Don't say it that way. Like, Jesus Christ. So anyway, this Hollywood agency flies a guy out to Newport, Rhode Island, because I'm living in Bristol, Rhode Island.
I might have to delete this stream.
Why?
You're getting into You're getting into bridge territory.
You think this has any bearing on anything?
I don't know, maybe, but go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, this assistant guy flew out here, and he was like, "I've been paid to show you a good time, to show you how we treat our clients at this agency." And I was like, "Okay." And he was like, "I know the best place in Newport for a lobster roll." And I was like, I looked at him and I was like, "Where did he grow up?" And he was like, "I grew up in Oregon." And I was like, "I grew up in New England." And he was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Do you see what's wrong with this?" And he was like, "No." And I said, "Dude, do you think I haven't tried every lobster roll under the fucking sun? Like, I lived here my whole life. I'm fucking 30 years old, dude."
I don't like lobster.
I was like, I don't like lobster. I'm not impressed by lobster. I used to have to sell lobster at a job. Like,
One
I don't.
time, my dad fished a dead body out of the
Yeah,
ocean that
one
was
time.
covered in
Yeah,
lobsters. They were
one
eating
time
them.
my dad found a dead body covered in lobsters, and I vowed to never eat them again because they ate the human flesh. I was like, you flew out here from Hollywood to Newport. You rented this convertible. You picked me up at my apartment, and your big show is you're going to get me a lobster roll. I was like, "What? You serious? Like, this is the whole 9 yards your boss was talking about?" So anyway, he was like, "Yeah, man, I don't know. They're really flashy there. This is just like a job for me." And I was like, "Okay." And then we just hung out, had some lunch, and I was like, "Well, we're not signing with you, but thanks for the burger, and you seem like a great dude, and bye." And like that, it was just really weird. It was very strange.
Yeah, we've
But
had some
then,
weird moments.
yeah. But then eventually we met our agent, and yeah, they reached out to us, and
Yeah, it was weird.
it wasn't any weird slick lines like, "I figured out your problem. You're allergic to money." It was like, "Hey, I read your books and I followed your Kickstarter, and I really like this issue of your books, and I think it's like they actually did the work and they actually like knew stuff." And we were like, "Oh, you're not trying to flip our stuff into a quick buck in Redbox. You're like, you actually care about the stuff we're doing." Okay. And that was when we knew we had found a good agent.
Yeah, our agent right now he's great. His name's Jim Eric.
We love you, Jim. Kim woke up, said, "Sorry, I fell asleep after putting your kid to sleep." Kim, go back to sleep. You deserve it. Let's see. Voodoo says, "I've completely given up trying to work for large companies. I just market myself on Instagram and started my own Etsy store selling shirt designs." That's rad.
Good.
Good for you, man.
That's that thing. It's like don't wait for people. Do your thing. If you know that you have a value to you, show it. Just do it. Just make the things you want to make.
Darkstorm said that Beck, you listed off a set of helpful art books a while back. Great if it was a link people had access to. I don't know if your site's still up, but didn't it have like Alla Prima for imaginative
Uh,
realism, something else?
yeah, it's all real old. But yeah, I don't. I took all that stuff down.
The Loomis books are good for core fundamentals. Those are free online still, I think.
But then there's a bunch of stuff that exists right now that's like new things that are crushing. It's like you can get
Yeah.
manga materials, and just Google it, and you can find like tons of anatomy resource. It's really good there.
Mm.
And then like literally for me to do studies and shit, like
Pose my hand.
all I use is Pinterest, dude. Like I just have
Oh,
folders of like anatomy reference and like you know, acrobats and weightlifters and tons of shit. Like you can get everything there. It's such an easy thing to do. And there's tons of ways to do that. Like you could make a Miro board with all your shit on it. You could do fucking, just save everything to your computer and have a massive file to go from.
yeah.
But in terms of just like studying fundamentals, yeah, I mean, there's tons of good resources out there. The ones that I learned the most from where might be aged out now. They might not be ones that are as viable as some contemporary things are, but there's always the James Gurney books,
Hmm.
and then there's always Loomis and Hogarth and all that for more like exaggerated forms and things.
Yeah.
But there's so much. There's just like infinite material. Like that whole wave of everybody making, Gumroad content, it's kind of good and bad because you get a mixture of like people who really know what they're doing in like a true fundamental sense and people who are just making money on Gumroad
Yeah.
to like just put stuff out. So you do kind of have to be a little weary of like who's like, not that there's bad advice necessarily, but just whose advice are you taking right now? Is it somebody
Right.
who's a master of their craft, or is it somebody who's figuring shit out and, you know, have that context in your mind of like it's not gospel what everybody's saying if they're not like the mountaintop artists, like the best of the best people who've seen everything, done it all. Like you want to listen to somebody like Ian McKeg.
Yeah. And also know like what you're going to them for. Like there might be an artist whose drawings you don't love, but whose colors are amazing. And it's like if they're doing a tutorial on color, grab it. Like if
Or if
there's some,
it's like how to use a program and like how to paint
yeah,
a certain way in that program, then yes,
yeah.
tons of valuable stuff like that.
Manser says I worked for a gaming company out here in Chicago, and the average salary was 50K. Yeah, that sounds about right for Chicago. It's probably a little higher now, but yeah, that sounds about right for Chicago. Uh, I like cookies says I thought New York was more expensive. So I think right now the most expensive city to live in the country is San Francisco. Number two is probably New York. I think three is LA. Four and five are Denver, Boston, and then after that I start to. I'm not quite sure,
I
but I'm
think
pretty sure
Boston's
those.
probably higher than Denver in terms
Yeah,
of rent.
those are the top five for sure. I know San Francisco is at the top. San Francisco is a joke. It's ludicrously expensive to live there.
Yeah, we know
Um,
multiple people who like live there for work and
yeah.
stuff, and just how crazy it was.
So if you get a job there, like I said earlier, you might see a six-figure salary, and you might be like, "Oh my God, I'm getting 50K here. It's 100K there." But you're gonna spend that 50K just living there. So like, just keep that in mind when you're looking around for stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing of like advocating for freelance, especially in the beginning, is because you can like it's an uncomfortable thing to do, but you can live wherever you want if you're freelance. Like if you have to move and be somewhere very cheap in order to survive,
Hmm.
you can do that. It might be uncomfortable. You might not want to do it. You might not, you know, you might just want to take the long road and not do that. But for me, that's what I did. I just moved to very cheap places because I was like, if as long as I have the internet, I'm fine. Like I can do this anywhere. So I just kind of did that,
Yeah.
and it didn't really matter where I lived. I
How
really
much
like
does a
the way
magic
this
card?
monkey's coming.
Leighton says, "How much does a magic card pay on average? Isn't it still 1,200?
No, it's less than that. I think the
Less than
base
that?
is. I think it goes between like 800 and 1500 or something. I'm not sure.
I think the average is like between 1,000 and 1,200.
I don't think. I think the base is like 8 or 850. I think that's the
Yeah.
normal card rate. 850 is their start. The average isn't 1,000 though. I know. I'm pretty
Okay.
positive on that.
I
I
thought
could
they
be
upped it a
wrong,
few
but
years ago.
did they?
I
Maybe
thought
I'm
they did a
totally
few
wrong.
years ago. I'm gonna go with you. You do more work for them, but
It might be 1,000. I might be
I could have sworn they upped it because I think a
misremembering.
bunch of. I think after all that stuff happened with people I'm not gonna name, I think they upped it. It was around the same time they redid the rights thing for like playmats and stuff, where they were like, "We understand our artists need to make more money," like to like quell that whole thing.
Okay, Joshua Meehan says, yeah, it is 1,000 for the base.
Okay. Dave, is there a link or a page? Oh, yeah, we mentioned the art books thing. Um, I always tell Dave to tell clients, Kim, to tell clients he doesn't get out of bed for a certain amount of money, but he never does it. It's a good line to drop.
What is that?
Manser says there's a book called Graphic Artist Guild Pricing for Ethical Guidelines, all about what to charge for all kinds of art. That's a good place to start, but the answer is always going to be what they're willing to pay you. Because you'll be amazed how much you can get away with asking for if the client is right.
Yeah, and it's the the artist guild thing. It's like, yeah, ideally, but it's flattening everything too much. Not everybody's the same skill level. Not everybody offers the same thing. Not everybody has the best reputation. You know, it's like there's so many variables in that
Hmm.
that that's going to change your rate like dramatically in either direction. It's like, so yeah. I mean, and it's not like every company you work for has a set rate, and not every artist working on the same things has the same day rate or whatever. But it's important to, if you are working on something, to ask other artists in your field, just so that we're all on the same page, so that nobody's like lowering it for everybody else, because
This is a
that's
good question.
definitely a problem.
It's a good question for you, Dave. For you guys, when does a piece reach the finished point? I say it's a good question for Dave because I have two answers. If it's a client piece, it's when they say it's done and they pay me. If it's a personal piece, I'm sitting on like 42 unfinished paintings right now. So Dave pumps stuff out very regularly.
uh I don't know, it's all instinct. It's like whenever I feel like I'm either done with it, like I just don't care anymore,
Yeah,
or if there's something in it and I'm like, oh, I'm enjoying the process, like I really love pushing this to a new place, then I keep working on it. But really, it just comes down to, you know, how much time am I willing to invest into this to get it to a certain point, and what is the project, whatever. Like if it's for a client, then it's just whenever I'm done doing my best.
yeah. Like
That's pretty much it.
I can finish client work easily. That's but for some reason with personal stuff, I always have this problem where once I'm not excited to work on it anymore, I have a really hard time finishing it. And I don't
Well,
want to
you,
post it because it doesn't look done yet.
well, you just have to develop like the discipline of,
Yeah,
like, you have to treat yourself like it's that thing of, you'll spend your whole life working for somebody else at like a shitty retail job where like you know that you want to be this artist person or whatever, and that, but then when you sit down to do art, you don't even do the bare minimum that you did at that retail job for yourself. It's like you don't
right.
actually sit down and put in the time that you put into these jobs that you say you're trying to escape from, into the thing that you love doing. It's like that funny like disconnect that happens of like, man, if I just put the same amount of time that I put into, like if I just moved to the middle of nowhere or did whatever I had to do, it's in order to start going, and I put in that same effort that I put into that other thing
Right.
that I was trying to escape from into something I actually want to do, like you'd make serious progress. But I think most people have that same thing of like, oh, nobody's making me do this, therefore I can, kind of fuck off a bit.
Yeah, I get in this weird cycle. I don't know if anyone in chat relates to this, where I'm constantly working. Like I'll still work a 10-hour day, but I'm not finishing anything, but I'm working on tons of different stuff. Like I'll have multiple things I'm cycling between, but I never feel like something's done. Like even if other people look at it and they're like, it's done, I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel like it's done. It's like a weird, I don't know. It's like creative ADHD or something. It's very strange.
Yeah, and it'll feel, I mean, most of those things just are, it's done when you just post it, just get it out.
Yeah.
There's also this thing where you can treat something as, you can be too precious with stuff. It's like
Mm.
the thing of the, like when I was talking about like, oh, my idea with Starvale now is to do a bunch of short stories. It's just like low expectation, but just try your best in these short bursts, because you're going to be done with it quickly, relatively, rather than dedicating yourself to this giant story arc and stuff. And you
Yeah.
learn more faster. And that's kind of the whole idea behind it, is just like get as much mileage down as possible. And the more you make, like I kind of relate it to, is this great video called Why You Need to Fail, or Why You Should Fail. It's
That's
by
a good
Derek
video.
Sivers. If you
Yeah.
look up Derek Sivers, Why You Failing, or I forget exactly what the name of the video is, but basically there's a bit in it. He talks about how a great pianist was like when he was in his like music. I think he went to school for music, and he was in the music room. In one of the rooms, there was like the best piano player they had in the college, whatever, and they were doing nothing but playing the wrong notes, like over and over again, like just fucking up a thing over and over, just trying new things constantly. And like that's how they got very good, was like finding all of their walls and butting up against them and continually trying to push through. And I think about that with art. Like I always think like people must be so sick of me doing nothing but like portraits and shit. But the only reason I do that is just because I'm so focused on knocking out a specific type of style or a skill set. I'm trying to just hone in on something I'm after. And I'm treating that as that same kind of practice room idea of like, I'm just going to keep doing these quick things that I'm pushing. And then when I get like a job, I can test it all out. Or like what I'm doing right now, I'll focus on like a bigger illustration to showcase like everything that I've learned doing a bunch of those little tiny things very quickly. And so I think that if you're too precious about everything that you do, then you can have like a massive slowdown in your progression of your skills just because it's like you're holding on to it too long.
I definitely struggle with that.
It's like because you can't be perfect. You just need to hammer to the other side of what you're doing.
Let's see. Dude, I'm getting classic Crimson Dagger's eyes from tonight. This pleases me. Yeah, I mean, this is basically what we used to do every day. What about a salary and freelance, says Felix? Well, by default, there's no salary in freelance because no one's giving you a salary. You're self-employed. So it depends on who you're freelancing for and what they pay and how much work you want to do. So it's like a work-life balance thing where do you have like one or two clients that pay a ton of money? Or do you have like 15 clients that don't pay much? Like that's kind of where you're getting into in that area.
But there actually is a nice little sweet spot where because of the pandemic, so many jobs just went to home. So like normally the jobs that forced you to be in studio, otherwise you couldn't do them. Now a lot of those jobs you can work from home, and there's Slack channels and there's all these different ways for everybody to meet every day, and there's so much infrastructure in place to facilitate that type of job that now you can really kind of work from anywhere doing, you know, these jobs that used to require being in person. Yeah. So in that way there is the opportunity to have a salary and kind of technically, you know, feel like you're a freelancer.
Sort of. I guess the bar for salary now that that's the case, what you just said, is really how much money does a client have to give you before they're legally required to give you health insurance? And if you're under that bar, you're a freelancer. And if you're over that bar, you're a salaried employee. That
yeah, like
kind of feels like what's going on.
I've been kind of full-time with a company for almost 2 years now. And they don't give me like benefits, but I have, you know, kind of a salary.
You have a day rate?
Yeah, which equates to a salary, you know.
Basically, yeah, it's essentially the same thing. Yeah.
I just don't get the other stuff that comes with like a job like that.
There was a period a few years ago where Blizzard was doing this thing where they didn't want to have full-time employees because they didn't want to keep doing the benefits, so they would cycle people in for 6-month periods to work on projects, and then they would kick them out and bring in a new set of people. The idea being that if they brought it right up to the line of like, after this amount of time, you have to call them an employee and you have to give them these benefits. So they would bring in freelancers in quotations, set them up in a hotel, have them work there full time, and then right when they hit that limit, they would get rid of them and bring in a new wave of people, which was weird. I remember when they were doing that, because I had a few friends that ended up going out for it, but felt kind of shitty because a lot of them like really wanted to work there, but I guess I understand what they were doing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I remember that.
Let's see. But why didn't you guys pursue, Muhammad says, why didn't you guys pursue NFTs? There are still artists making a lot of money from it nowadays. There's not a ton of money in NFTs right now. There wasn't
not as much as there was.
In the very beginning, there was a ton. I mean, there's two answers. The the more realistic, balanced answer is that, like, overall, it wasn't what it was presented as. It seemed like this too good to be true golden ticket thing, and it was kind of too good to be true. It was a very flash in the pan, make a bunch of money, essentially a trade off. Make a bunch of money, and then kind of coast off that money you made in the beginning with a little bit decreasing, diminished returns as you go. Like, make 100K right now, and then 50, and then 20, and then 10, and then pennies on it. The trade-off being that everybody you know in the art community is going to blacklist you because it was so unpopular. And like, that's one thing a lot of people don't like talking about with this topic is like, make a ton of money and be blacklisted by all of your friends, all of your coworkers, all of your social media followers for jumping onto this hot button thing, or don't rock the boat, decide not to do the NFTs, stick to what you know and see how it plays out. Because in the beginning, nobody knew. Nobody knew if the crypto bros were right and NFTs were going to be the next thing and it was going to revolutionize the industry. And nobody knew if the artist people were correct and this was a huge scam and nobody should do it. So the wise thing to do would be to sit back and wait and see where it went. And essentially where it went was kind of in the middle. In the very beginning, there was a ton of money in it. The returns diminished, and now there's not really enough money in it to make it sustainable. So the cost of having gone fully into that and losing your audience or potentially losing your audience by jumping onto the bandwagon of something that was so unpopular at the time probably wasn't ultimately worth it for most people. But that's a formula you're going to have to come up with for each individual artist.
Yeah, it's up
But
to you how you want to do it, but
yeah,
yeah, I mean, like that, I totally understand. Like, there's so much gray area with that stuff, and I feel like on either side, there's douchiness,
yeah,
and like really, what it came down to for me was like, if you got medical bills or something, like somebody in your family is struggling, or you're struggling, or whatever it is,
oh, I
it's like
mean,
I get it. Like, go do the thing, and it's like I totally understand it. It's like, do you steal the bread? Like, I get it.
it's not even a hypothetical. I mean, I won't say his name. We have a friend in the art community who had incredibly high medical bills because of a stomach issue, and he did like 2 NFTs and paid off all of his bills, and his life went back to normal. And I'm like, absolutely, dude. Like, that's fantastic for you. Like,
Yeah,
I
you
totally
can't
get
you
it.
can't like be all high and mighty against people like that. Like, that's not everybody. Like, I would say
Yeah,
more often than not, it's the other thing of just, jumping on the thing to make the most money possible. Like, that's the reality of it.
yeah,
It's like, but there's even the instance of like, you're a new artist and you're struggling. It's like, come on. Like, it's
yeah.
so tempting. Like, if that existed when I was starting out and I was like barely surviving, like, absolutely I would have done
Sure.
it.
I
It's like,
mean, you
yes, are
did
there moral qualms about this? It's like, yeah, but
before
there's
we even
moral
knew
qualms about using your iPhone. It's like,
before we knew the backlash existed, because right after it came out you were like, oh cool, and you did one, and we didn't even know it was bad at the time, and just that one got you so much backlash. We were like, oh, what is happening?
well, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't even set up an account. Somebody made it
Yeah.
for me, and they were like,
Oh
here.
yeah, right, I
Yeah, like
forgot about that.
I didn't actually make a thing. I didn't know how any of it worked. Somebody just set me up and was like, "Here, sell a thing." And then I did, and it sold for like $15,000 or something like that. And I
Yeah, in
was
like a
just like,
day.
I actually didn't like it. Before anybody even told me it was bad, I was like, I shouldn't be making that much money off of this. It
Hmm.
just immediately rung as like weird. That's why I didn't make another one. Like, even before the backlash, like, I didn't make more than one. I was like, I just want to see what happens. And then
Just
that
make
happened, and I was like, that's too good to be true. Like, whatever this is, it's too good to be true. You don't make
yeah,
money like that with nothing else going on. Like, this
but
has to
yeah,
be blood money. Like, something's going on.
to,
I'm laundering mob money or something.
to answer your question, Mohammed, but that's basically what it was like, we saw a bunch of people do NFTs and make a ton of money, but the backlash against them was basically, we will never associate with this person again. They are evil. they have like there were people calculating math of like this artist has contributed to this much gas emissions from this many flights around the globe this many times. We've tallied up all their NFTs and all the emissions that came from those NFTs, and this person's carbon footprint from their artwork is this. Like, it was getting that insane. So the trade-off was like, you know, wait and see if it's as bad as people are saying, and if it's going to be a long-term thing, or jump right in and risk losing your whole audience. So ultimately, we chose not to jump in and lose our whole audience. And ultimately, what ended up happening is there's one or two artists out there that do still make monies from NFTs. One or two, you know, there's very, very few. Mostly brand artists, people that are more fine arty. It's not really illustrators and stuff like that. It's more fine arts kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not like NFTs aren't like a huge thing in the art world. It's not really
But
a thing. Like,
when it comes to like me personally,
yeah,
like I'm thankful for where I'm at right now, because I would literally pay $15,000 if nobody bothered me.
yeah,
Like I would
yeah,
pay that money just to make people shut up and leave me alone. I'd be like,
exactly.
oh, I'd rather not make extra money. I'd rather
Yeah,
make less money than
it's
listen to
worth not
people complain.
exactly. It's worth not. I'd pay 15 grand to not have your Twitter replies locked at 20 for the next 6 months because people hate you. Like,
Exactly.
yeah,
That's like exactly what it felt like. I was like I didn't know any of the drama, and then as soon as I posted up an NFT and it sold, I just got bombarded with stuff, and I was like, I had no idea. And I was like, I get that I'm immediately a bad guy for that. I don't
yeah,
care. Whatever. I'm a bad guy to who? A bunch of artists.
yeah.
Uh-oh.
Whoops.
I'm
Watch out.
terrified.
They're coming.
Not the artists. The single
the end.
scariest group you've ever been.
Yes. Don't rock that boat.
If it were a bunch of football players, it
Maybe.
might have been a different story. But I'm not really worried about people who, are going to talk shit.
All back to that previous question. Pencil in means booking you in for a job but not confirmed. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I've never
Have
heard
you?
of that either.
Yeah, so I guess not. Maybe advertising agencies do that more commonly, but yeah. Typically, if I take a job, I take a job and it's contracted and I'm on the job.
Yeah, what happened to me in advertising was like the only experience I had was just the calls where people are like, "Can you do this project in 24 hours?" And I'd be like, "Oh shit!" Like that was my experience with ad people, was how quickly they wanted stuff and turnaround. So I was never penciled in for things. It was just, "Hey, call call Dave. He's our like pinch hitter artist who could do this thing." So anytime there was something that needed to be done very quickly, and was like a rendered thing, I got asked to do it. It was very stressful because I was always like, no job was relaxing. It was always go 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 go. Like, come on.
You know, the ultimate irony is looking back on everything.
What?
In the end, for the TV pitch, we got money, but I could have had money and a lobster roll.
It's true.
Technically, I chose the lesser deal. Yeah, shout out to our agent Jim. He's great.
He's the best.
If you're listening and you're not subscribed to Dave's Patreon, go check it out. He does these streams weekly. There's also a Discord, cool group projects, Q&A, all kinds of stuff. Will this be saved on your channel? Are you going to delete this one? Did I divulge anything secret?
Uh, I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think I've said anything. I haven't named anybody.
It's true.
It's up to you.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, nobody's really watching, in terms of like mass numbers where anybody's going to find out that we said anything, even if there's not anything to say in here to be like, whoa,
Yeah,
what's
I
that?
mean, even if
We
they
didn't
did, I don't
violate
think I've said
anything.
anything. We're like, I've been
Yeah.
very vague about everything. I mean, unless Coca-Cola wants to come after me for defamation. I don't know. That was a metaphor, but hey, maybe.
No, I think we're fine.
Cool. Let's see. Scrolling back up. There's a lot of questions. Hmm. Yeah, confirmation that yes, New York is insanely expensive. Yeah. Yep, $1,000 for Magic Snow is the base. That sounds low. Can't stress how unqualified I call this. How do I know it's how do I know it's too late for me to live off art? I mean, if your cost of living is covered by what you're able to make as an artist, essentially, or what you can make as an artist within a reasonable amount of time.
I mean, it just depends. Yeah, it's like if your ultimate goal is to, like I was saying this on the last stream actually when somebody asked a similar question, but it basically like if you're 80, it's probably too late to make a living. If you're, it's like if you're at like if you're getting up there and you're like I need to, whatever, like you might be able to do it like hobby wise, like just have something going on,
Yeah.
but it does take an investment of time. Like I work constantly and I didn't get to a healthy place in my career for like I would say like a legitimately like comfortable existence wasn't for like 9 or 10 years.
Yeah.
And then to start making like good money at it was, or just feeling that way in the beginning, was probably like 5 years of like constant work, studying like every day, like all that stuff. So it just, it's not easy.
It also depends on what you're trying to do because
Yeah.
there's furry artists that make more money than Magic the Gathering illustrators.
Yeah, it depends on your
So
style too. It's like if you're doing like full, like if you're doing comic work, you don't
yeah,
need to be like this super high polished like fully mastered anatomy artist. Like that doesn't matter as much. Like there's a bunch of different ways to go about it. Like not everything is rendering, not everything is like this high level execution of work. Some stuff is the basic things. It's like if you're a cartoonist and you do like if that and you're really successful with that, it's like that's as legitimate of a living as an artist as anything else.
yeah.
You
I
don't need
mean,
to be like
I think
any of the
Marco
artists that you like.
I think Marco Derjovic is a more skilled artist than Jim Davis, but Jim Davis made way more money. So
Yeah, exactly.
it's like,
Let this be a lesson that an idea trumps anything.
yes,
And I
ideas travel.
yes, an idea
Um,
is going to make you way more.
Rocket Manhunter 101 asks, did AI art affect the art industry? Yes, but not to a huge degree, but I think it will as time goes forward.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the biggest, I'm sorry for being like a broken record with this stuff, but to me, the biggest thing is the lack of confidence that it gives artists starting out to pursue it as a career. That's one of the first things where I'm like, yeah, you're going to halt a lot of like innovation in spaces because artists are immediately kind of like, feeling defeated going into it. Like, oh, how am I ever going to compete with this? Like, that's the sad part. Like, that's how I think it like really impacts. But in terms of it, like affecting me, like it doesn't affect me, and it doesn't affect like artists who've been working and have careers doing it. It's just that whole entry level position. Like artists need to be able to start somewhere and work on shitty jobs, and they can't be replaced by AI, or else those artists will never be able to become artists who work on AAA things. You won't
Exactly.
you won't have a multitude of artists at a high skill level because they didn't have a way to grow and get to a place to
Yeah.
execute those things. I don't think AI is a bad thing in general. Like I think there's so many positive uses for it, even in art, in terms of like
Yeah.
even if you're like if you're a non-creative trying to convey an idea to an artist and you work at a company and you train an AI based off of art that was done at your company that's totally owned by you, and then you go like it could look something like this, but this is just AI's rendition. We want to see a creative take on it. It's like that's completely viable. Like there's tons of stuff like that. And the same thing for like, I heard this idea already too. It's like if you train an AI to map shadows and highlights the same way you do in your comics or your animation, and you go like, okay, here's my inks, map shadows and highlights the way I would. It's like, then, that's definitely a viable thing. Like, there's so many cool uses for AI to eliminate busy work and
It's
things that
gonna,
just suck to do.
I mean, obviously nobody knows for sure. I think it's almost a guarantee that it's gonna wipe out the gig economy for like logo designers and stuff. I think all
Yeah.
that's gonna be that's just gone with AI. Like it can already do that like in 2 seconds. I think that's an unfortunate reality. I think, like Dave was saying a minute ago, if you think of the industry as a funnel in terms of skill, artists beginning are on the wide end of the funnel, and as it narrows down, they get better and better and better until the best artists working in an industry are the most, been working the longest. They're at the narrow end of the funnel. AI is predominantly going to affect the wide end with the beginning stuff. It's going to make easy jobs that don't pay much easier for companies to pump out because they can save money by not paying. Like, me and Dave used to do card art for companies that paid $50 for a card, and it's like for like an illustration, and they were like, try to make it close to Magic the Gathering quality. It's $100 job, and it's like, holy shit! But like people take those jobs because they have the passion to get into the industry. But if those companies that are making such low margins can save a buck and just have an AI do that card, they're gonna do that, and it's gonna wipe that whole ground floor out of the industry,
Yeah.
and that's going to have huge effects. It definitely will. I think it was already happening before AI, but I think artists are transitioning into making themselves brands. Most of them have Etsy stores, most of them have apparel, most of them are putting their art onto things and selling the objects instead of just prints. Like people are finding other ways to innovate around the industry kind of shaking itself up, but yeah, I mean, right now it's already affecting the industry to a small degree, but as time goes forward, it's only going to get more and more and more powerful. I think, like, I know animators are upset about it. I think a lot of studios are going to start doing keyframes and then having AI plug in everything between the keyframes. I think that's pretty inevitable.
But I also
But
think
yeah,
it's just once the ethical side is ironed out a bit more, like once we've kind of come to a place where, yeah, you can't just take material from, like that video is very telling, that Corridor Digital Castlevania rock paper
yeah, that
scissors video. It's like that
huge backlash.
that's trained on Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. It's like that's a problem because they don't own Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. It's
Yeah,
like the thing is, if you hired an artist, like if they had hired an artist to do like whatever X amount of drawings to convey a certain style thereafter, that's a different story. If they do that and then train the AI and then do the whole thing, are they eliminating jobs? Yes, but they never were going to have a massive budget to create a animated feature thing. It's like that's, just the reality of some people. It's like I get it. But that's kind of where it needs to go. It needs to go to a place where you can't just take stuff that isn't yours at all, that you didn't compensate in any way. It's like if you're training it off of some team of artists that you already have to, like I said, do the busy work, help with the animation stuff, whatever. It's like I get that direction. Like I can totally see that being something. But the idea that, you know, I mean, it's not going anywhere.
yeah.
It's going to impact artists,
Yeah,
from this
it's
point
going
on.
to change the whole industry, but we don't know to what degree yet, and I don't think it will for another probably decade till
We
it's
just
like
need to
absolute.
get the legal shit ironed out. Like that
Yeah,
needs to be figured out.
and it is being figured. It's in court right now. It's being litigated. For all we know, these companies might get sued for millions of dollars, and they'll all get shut down. It'll be a dark web only thing. That's one reality. Another reality is the court says these artists don't have any say to this stuff. It's all scraped data. We're siding with the tech team. Nobody knows which way it's going to go. The closest legal parallel is sampling in the 90s when rap and hip hop were taking stuff, changing it, altering it, building new beats and stuff out of pieces of older things. If that precedent is anything compared to this, they're probably going to side with the artists over the AI. But I'm talking out of my ass as much as anybody else. It's going to be up to the judge and then ultimately up to the Supreme Court because it will get appealed. and then whatever happens after that happens after that. But it's already affecting the industry. People are already losing jobs. It's a thing. It sucks, but you know, it's not affecting the art world to a degree where it's an excuse to give up on doing what you want to do or to throw
No.
in the towel and go, I'll never be an artist. You absolutely still can be. So it's not that severe.
Well, it's like people who kind of come out and be like, "You're crazy if you don't think AI is doing blah blah blah." It's like, yeah, but you don't know anything about art pipelines. You don't know how an industry
Mm-hmm.
works. Like, you don't know anything about this. You're a random person who's never worked with an art team, just talking out of your ass. It's like when
Yeah.
you actually work on a project long term, the amount of iterations you do every day that need to be consistent. It's like I don't doubt that AI will get there. It's certainly not there right now. It's going to
No.
take a while to get there. It's like you're like, and the other thing is like, yeah, you can do 1,000 mediocre shitty derivative things, but that's not what we're looking for in games. We're not looking
Yeah.
for the same thing you've seen a million times. You might get that from like, if you see like Genshin Impact and you're like, that's just like 1,000 anime characters I've seen in a bunch of different things. It's like, fair enough. I
Yeah.
get that. But for other stuff, it's like, you're not going to get that without training an AI based off of somebody who's already working within that, design idea already. It's like there's
Yeah.
just not a road where you're losing people completely.
And trust me, just because of how people operate, because they're humans, no matter what happens with AI, there will be a side market of probably 30% of the industry that is the bumper sticker crowd that will go like ethically sourced art. We didn't use robots on our thing. Like there's going to be a carve out of people that will make it an ethical issue where we will never use an AI. And these companies, part of their appeal, because they want to bring in customers that care about that, is we're not going to do this. So you should support us and pay a little extra. And that
Oh
will be a
yeah.
thing. That's a
I
thing in
mean,
every industry from food to art.
in artist focused jobs like, Magic the Gathering and things where they highlight artists, it's like that's not going away. They're not going to be like, okay, now everything
No.
goes to AI. Like they would get so much negative attention for
So
that.
this is a good bridge to the NFT thing we talked about earlier. When we were talking earlier about the artist's dilemma with the NFT of like, yeah, I could make a bunch of money, but I'm going to lose my audience and then I won't have money in the long term. It's going to be a flash in the pan thing because they're all going to backlash against me for doing this. The same thing is going to happen to the companies if they decide to go. Like if Magic the Gathering came out and said we're going full AI, Magic wouldn't exist in a year or two because the backlash from their audience would be so severe that they wouldn't be able to survive it. So like there is that component where there's such a taboo around using it for industries that care about the artwork specifically. For industries that don't care, for certain advertising companies and things like that, for billboards, for logos, if it's just corporate level stuff, they might not give a shit. But for companies that focus on concept art and illustrations and traditionally person based art stuff, the backlash from their audiences would be so severe that it incentivizes them not to use the AI. So that is kind of a safety net.
But also, when something is super easy, it's less attractive. I mean, like
Yeah.
there's that whole side of it. It's like you don't. It's okay. I'll put it in these terms. People don't value things that are free.
Yep.
They just don't. Like that's a like you. I'm not making that up. That's a business thing. You actually will get like people less retention from stuff that is free in terms of like value that people put onto a thing and they're like, oh, this watch is this much versus this watch which is this much. It's like the more expensive watch like draws you in. And I think the fact that AI is just click and type some stuff and then you get it, it's just so cheap that it's not going to carry any value. So
It's
it
like everybody
just
has a
doesn't really
folder.
work.
Everybody's got a folder of Gumroads they never watched. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I got it on sale for $1. I never watched it. It's like, there's probably something in there, but you know,
Yeah, you really like I learned that lesson doing streaming stuff. It's like if I had charged for like a class, I think people would get more out of it. than if I did, because then like people actually are engaged because they want their money's worth. They want to actually like be involved. They see that as like purchasing a ticket to do something that's actively like good for them. But if it's free and it's just like a cheap option, then people treat it like a cheap option. I don't know. It's really weird.
Leighton says, Dave, I'm still in the studying phase, not ready for work yet. I'm finding that I go between I can do this and I'm not going to make it often. Any advice on keeping my head up?
Wait, sorry. I wasn't. I didn't think you were reading something. What did you say?
Oh, sorry. Leighton says, Dave, I'm still in the studying phase, not ready for work yet. I'm finding that I go between I can do this and I'm not going to make it often. Any advice on keeping my head up?
um, I mean, one of the things that always helped me was realizing that everybody who came before me went through the same exact thing I'm going through. That nobody starts out perfect and nobody has all the answers for something. And like that imposter syndrome, it's like it's so common. Every artist experiences it. And anybody who does anything, it's like they go through a similar thing. Maybe not exactly, but they go through a very similar thing to what you're going through. And I think it's important to remember that that's just a common and expected thing in any industry that you try to break into, in any skill you try to develop. It's like, yeah, you're not going to always get the thing you want, but it's not about that. And you shouldn't expect to be perfect. I mean, like the thing of like perfection, it's like you're doing something that you're not good at yet. So perfection is something that's just not worth chasing. It's like that's not even why you're doing it. Like if you were perfect at this, then why would you have the incentive to just get into it in the first place? It's like I always think about that. Like I've listened to enough comedians talk about how like, oh, there were so many more funny people in my school when I was growing up than me. Like there were so many funnier people. But I think that's actually a curse in a way. Like if you're naturally really great at something, I don't think you value it the same way somebody who really works hard for it values it.
Well, it's like people that are born hot. It's like they don't, you don't value it because you never lived any other life.
Right. It's like how many people do you go like, wow, they had so much potential and they didn't do anything with it. I feel like
Yeah.
the people who have like the really intense, like it's the people who have drive and the motivation to stick with something and the discipline. Those are the people that get somewhere with a thing. And that's what you have to keep in mind. It's like, yeah, if you were naturally, you had this God given gift where you could just knock this stuff out and you were perfect at it, it's like that'd be nice for a little while. It's like, but the struggle, like the push to get somewhere, the achievements that you feel when you've broken through to the next, level of whatever you're doing, that's the stuff that you're after. Like that's the thing that's going to like keep you motivated and engaged in what you're doing.
It
So I
also
don't think it's a negative.
it also builds a lot of character to go
Yeah.
through that stuff, and people value that. They can tell that you like are coming from a place where you actually value what you're doing and they can trust you.
I also think it's worth it. Like if you're feeling that way and it's a good idea to kind of like mention it on something like this, but talk to artists, email artists that you admire and ask them questions. Be like, I'm an aspiring artist and blah, blah, blah. It's like, you know, how did you get through like the early stages in your career? Ask if you can talk to them, even lie and say that you're doing something for school. Just
Yeah.
whatever you have to do to
I mean,
actually get some human contact.
I did this to meet KK Kentucky, and they were like really good friends. Like my initial reach out to him was like, "Hey man, like I don't know what I'm doing, and I feel super lost." And he was like, "Cool," and like we just talked about it. It was great, and yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that everybody who's doing what you want to do is also human, just like you.
Yeah,
And they go through all the same stuff. And, you're nothing like special for feeling that way.
you
It's,
have to
it's
like
part of the process.
if you can get to a place where you can respect the other person you're talking to, but also take them off the weird pedestal where they're not human anymore. They're super art person. Like respect them and respect the boundary that's there, but also talk to them like they're a human, and you're gonna probably get a more human response. But yeah. Here's a good question because I don't know the answer to this. Sunrise says, "Is ArtStation a good place to put your portfolio? I always get spam bots. What happened to ArtStation? I checked out after the whole AI thing."
I think they're like trying to get people back, but I think like they've really messed that up. Like they
So,
really fucked up with that.
good example of what we were just talking about. They embraced something too soon, and the backlash from the community was so massive it might have destroyed the very platform.
Yeah, I think like this is the thing I would say. If you're starting out, do not make decisions based off politics of a art group or mob or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're right. Don't make you can't afford to make decisions based off of that yet. You just can't. I don't care if it's right or wrong or whatever. It's like if you're trying to survive, you have a family, I'm not saying like do work for the cartel or something.
Yeah.
but you're going to need to make some concessions and like, be on platforms like that because it exists and it is a place to get opportunities from. And you're not above it yet. You're just not. So
Yeah.
be everywhere is what I'm saying. Not just
Yeah.
ArtStation. Be on every site. If you're not on every site and you're complaining that you don't get work, that's already a red flag for me.
Absolutely.
You should be trying harder than that.
Kim, yes, I do love chicken thigh deals. You can survive for less than $10 a week. You just need white rice and chicken thighs. If you're feeling frisky, maybe a tomato. That's the being poor and living in New Bedford, Massachusetts diet.
Yeah.
Let's see. Looking for more questions here. How you feeling about this piece?
Good. I'm not crazy about the pedestal yet, but I'll figure it out. I'm happy that like painting inking thing like transitioned really well into just having color, like this chimpanzee.
Yeah, he looks good.
Yeah, like all I need to do is like some painting in Photoshop on top of him to like bring him to like a fully finished thing. But I think this line style, it just marries really well with the painted stuff. I think this is honestly like my missing link when it comes to rendered things that are like married to my drawings.
It's a good monkey pun.
Yep. Sorry.
This piece actually reminded me, I wanted to ask you, this style reminded me. When's the last time you were on the PlayStation Store?
I don't know. Like maybe like a week ago or something.
Imagine my surprise when I opened it up the other day to get Resident Evil 4, and there was a giant Terada Tatsuya piece.
Oh, I saw that.
And I said, what indie game hired the greatest of all time in 2023? I was like, holy shit, that is so cool that somebody did that.
Yeah, I
It's
saw
like
that
some
one.
it's like some Viking game, but I was like, man, that is so rad that they hired him.
Yeah, seeing some Tirada in the wild.
Let's see. The flood of AI trash will just make artists more desired. That could be true too. Sometimes when you flood a market, people instinctively want the opposite.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was saying about the free thing. It's like
Yeah.
it's just it holds no value to people.
I'll have you know that my emotional support Gumroad folder has benefited my mental health over the years. Hey man, we all have one. We all have a Gumroad we haven't watched yet.
I mean
Everyone's got at least.
everybody has like forget a
Yeah.
Gum Road you haven't watched. Everybody has art books they've never read.
You
Like
want to know the word?
how many art books where they teach you something have you never read a single word of?
Hmm.
So many. You just buy it because it's easier than studying. It's easier to just buy a thing and just leave it there and be like, I did it. It's like you didn't
I
do
would
it.
be,
You didn't do
I would,
shit.
I would be fascinated. Here's the thing I would really love to know.
Yeah.
If every year, if they didn't give out any user data, if every year Steam put out a number at the end of the year and said, this is how much money was spent on games nobody played,
Yeah.
just for games that people bought on a Steam sale and sat in their library, they're never going to play them. They never have played them. They just got them because they were $1.
I
I
mean,
would love to know what that number is.
it's the same exact thing as asking like a traditional artist, and I'm saying traditional right now because I think there is a lot of value in getting brushes for Photoshop and stuff. But it's like being, what brush do you use? Most of the time, all they're really looking for is a get out of jail free card. It's like, here's,
Yeah.
if I just had that, it would solve my problems. And it's like, no, it's never that. I ask now because I'm obsessed with texture. So I'm like, every time
Mm,
I just use, Twitter as a way to find artists, and I go like, oh my God, that brush, whatever you're doing right there is awesome. How did you do that? Can I
oh
pay
my
you,
God.
can I pay you money for it?
You
Yeah.
just you just reminded me. Chat. I know there's only 100 people here or less now, but hey, if anyone here knows anyone at Twitter, I will give you money to put me in contact with them. I'll pay you. My Twitter got stolen. It got hacked. My permissions got replaced on it. I can't log in. I lost my entire following. I have clients on there that I can't reach out to because we DM'd on Twitter exclusively. I can't get into the account. I need to talk to somebody. I've reached out to everyone at Twitter, filled out all the prompts. The prompts are absolutely insane. It's maddening. You fill out a prompt that says what happens. I explain it. They say, okay, fill out this questionnaire. You fill out the questionnaire and they say, okay, cool. We're going to email you with confirmation on your issue. They email you the confirmation. The confirmation says next steps. Click this link. You click the link. It's the same form you just filled out. You fill it out again. They go, okay, we'll email you with next steps. You get the email. It's the same form you just filled out twice. It's an endless loop. I've tweeted at Elon Musk. I did a comic and I drew Elon Musk. Didn't respond to that. I've tweeted hundreds of times at Elon Musk and Twitter support. If anyone knows anyone at Twitter, I need my goddamn account back. Thank you. I love you, chat. But oh my God, is it insane to not be able to have access to that?
Yeah, it's definitely a nice resource.
Yeah. Riley says AI art made me give up on my dream of painting purple-haired women with wide-cup breasts and the faces of children. The market's just too flooded. Yeah, man. The market really took a hit. It's like grapes of wrath.
Yeah, that market is done.
Mm-hmm.
If you like hot girls in spacesuits, you're fucking impoverished right now.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going anywhere.
Let's see. Looking for AI does take those small jobs. Look at D&D players. Someone hire an artist for their character. Now there's an AI generator for D&D characters. Yeah, it's like we were saying. Top of the
Yeah.
funnel, that's where the jobs are going to disappear. It's people that can't really afford art anyway. They're going to be the fastest ones to flake. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna hop off here in about 5 minutes.
If anyone has any last minute questions that I missed or that they want to ask, throw them in the chat. I'll do my best.
I just realized what time it was.
Hmm.
We've been chugging on this stream.
That's because I drank a cold brew after we got off the phone. And I said, I need a reason to feel good because this whole week's been feeling bad.
Yeah.
Maybe if I hop on a stream with Dave full of caffeine, it'll feel like I'm 10 years younger on a stream with Dave full of caffeine. And
Yeah,
it did.
I do have caffeine in me.
It did, chat. Thank you for this time capsule. I feel like it's 2013 again, living in my shitty New Bedford apartment.
Hmm.
You don't realize you're in the good times till they're gone.
I wish I could evict you from the good times.
Someone did. Don't worry. One
You're
thing that got me,
done.
quote, into industry was having an unapologetic art ethos that aligned with the projects I wanted to work on. At Dave Raposa, hoped to start a dialogue, but I thought it was worth saying. Hey, that's good, man. Or Goblin, great username. I gotta call you Goblin if your name's Goblin. Are you doing an in-depth tutorial on Patreon for this piece?
Uh, sort of. Yeah, I'm doing a mixture of things. I'm still working on my Ginyu Force one, but I keep making like pretty big jumps in this style, so it's kind of hard. I want to do one for this one though because I feel like I've made a couple like pretty big leaps with this that I didn't do before. Where I'm like, I don't know how important it is for me to do that Ginyu Force thing.
Mm,
I'm like, I don't know how much value it's gonna get versus something like this.
you're like Martin Scorsese. You do one for DeviantArt and one for you. One for them, one for me. Why don't you use Twitch? Um, this is linked to Dave's Patreon. I mean, in general, we'll probably start using Twitch again in the future a little bit. We stopped. We used to do it regularly, and we got real busy and stopped. But this is
But
directly for Dave's Patreon.
but our catalyst now is that we've hit a roadblock in our project that we've been working on forever. So
Yeah,
we're gonna need to start being active human beings again because we're gonna make another book and
it
have
was
that be out.
also infuriating to do Twitch all the time and not be able to talk about anything that was happening. But now that it's kind of done for now, we sort of can if we're vague.
Yeah, a little bit.
But yeah. Hmm. Dan, do you do mentorships or portfolio reviews for pay? I'll do portfolio reviews for free. I'm not going to charge money for that. I probably don't have time to do a mentorship and be a good mentor, but I can definitely look at your stuff and say, hey, these are your strengths and this is what you should work on and give you some advice. Um, oh, I have the stream. I can't hear what you're listening to. Ice Lover says, are you listening to the Bram Stoker's Dracula soundtrack? That's amazing. I love that soundtrack. I can't hear it.
No, I'm listening to the Bloodborne.
That's so
Bloodborne
funny.
soundtrack lives through copyright on YouTube, so that's why I'm listening to it.
Oh, yeah, it's video game music. It's not copyrightable
Yeah, but you know,
for
because
the
people,
pod.
yeah, people stream
Yeah,
it,
right.
so
Copyright
it's
strikeable, I should say.
yeah, it's one of the only things I can like listen to in the background and know that I'm not going to be banned.
Bloodborne soundtrack is amazing. It's gothic. It's rich. It's beautiful. And I want you to remember when you listen to it, chat, that it lost best soundtrack to Dragon Age 4.
It's very true.
I want you all to remember those songs from Dragon Age 4. We're all hearing them in our head right now. I know you all have your favorite Dragon Age 4 soundtrack song. I know you're humming it right now. Just remember that Bloodborne lost to that. Doesn't have to be art questions. Have you seen the Super Mario movie? I haven't. Dave did. Thoughts, Dave?
I thought it was good. I actually really liked it. You know, it's clearly a kids movie, so if you're somehow going into it thinking it's going to be for adults, you're a maniac.
There you go.
But yeah, I mean, it accomplished its job. Uh, we got a 2 and a 3 year old over here, so we took our kids and they really loved it and they could follow the story. And I think there's, you know, if it's for kids and a 2 year old can follow the story and tell me later on in the day what the story was and what Mario did and all that, it's like the mission accomplished.
Miguel says, any last minute tips for people wanting to do self oriented projects? My quick advice, there's a great movie with Robin Williams in it called What Dreams May Come. At the end of it, he has to go to hell. And he says, I'm going to hell. And his buddy who's with him says, here's the thing about hell. the longer you're in hell, the more likely you're going to stay in hell forever. So you have to have a really solid plan before you go in there, and you have to stick to that plan, because if you don't, you're going to get lost, and then you're just in hell forever. That's my advice. Make a really good plan, break it down into a spreadsheet with achievable steps on the micro so you can achieve the macro. Because if you don't, there's a very good chance you're going to get lost in hell.
Are you talking about What Dreams May Come?
Yes. There you go. Yeah.
Dan was a suicide. You can't bring him back.
You can't bring back suicides. It's a rule.
All right. Well, what can I do in here?
Apparently, it's unless you're really in love, then you can bring him back. Maybe, I don't know.
I liked Dan.
It was deep because the valley her house was in hell was an upside down cathedral ceiling, because it was like the reverse of God. You get that?
My dad once wanted to have sex with a Chinese woman, so now I am a Chinese woman.
There you go. That's the logic of that movie. Dad, you always respected. When I was a kid, Dad, you didn't respect me, but you did respect Cuba Gooding Jr., so now I'm him.
In heaven, I'm a busty broad, because my dad
was always paying attention to those busty broads.
My dad watched the Victoria's Secret fashion show all the time whenever it was on. So now I'm Adriana Lima in heaven. And I'm talking to my dad, and my dad wants to, I think he wants me.
That movie's logic does fall apart.
That is the weirdest part of that movie.
There's one character that double twists, where he's like, it's me, your mentor from college. And he's like, you're like a father to me. And he's like, I know. And now I'm down here. And he's like, why do you look like that? And he's like, well, I always respected this artist, and now I'm this guy. And then they go to hell, and he's like, wait a minute. You're not my mentor, are you? You're my other son. And then he goes, you got me, Dad. You got me.
You know what's really funny? If that, there's like this whole thing about like how many nerds are going to be in heaven and they're just the Mandalorian. There's just thousands of Mandalorians.
I mean, that's what the Mandalorian is now. It's thousands of people in Boba Fett costumes, so I guess that's heaven.
Yeah, they're just like, I really like this shit when I was fucking watching Disney Plus. So now here I am. I'm fucking Boba Fett.
Have you watched the most recent episode?
No.
I don't want to... Does chat care if I spoil it?
Yes.
Fuck. Alright, never mind. There's something in there that you're either going to love or you're going to fucking hate. And I'm very interested to see where you land on it.
I know, I gotta catch up on that season.
Future plans with Starville. Dave is doing some side comics on that now. Long term, I mean, I would love to see it as like a Cyberpunk Edge Runners type thing eventually. But
yeah.
Dan, have you listened to the Sopranos theme song in your car? Yeah, everyone. You can't live in a city and drive a car and not have done that at least once. Duh.
That's a question from that Are You Garbage podcast. I don't know if you've listened to that, where they
100%.
Figure out if you're trash or not.
Yeah, that's a key component of living in a city and being shit-faced. 100%.
I listened to The Wire, the first season of The Wire.
That's a good one too. I like the season 3 theme song with the kids singing it. It's my favorite Wire theme song. The best version of the Sopranos theme song is on Video Game Donkey's channel, where he just says, woke up this morning and got some gabagool. And then I went and got some more gabagool from Scooby-Doo. And he just says that repeatedly. It's fantastic. Let's see. Have you seen John Wick 4? No, I haven't seen any of the John Wicks. I've been saving them. Maybe this is the week, Maybe this is when I finally jump in.
I've seen all the other ones. I haven't seen 4 yet. I can't wait to see it, though.
As an artist, do you need to have art rivals or peers that push you? What do you do if you live in an environment where there's none of that around you? You live on the internet, man. If you can't find a rival on the internet, I don't know what to tell you.
I think it's healthy to have somebody that's like out there living as an example of who you could be if you were you at your best. I do think that that's a good thing to be. Like, it doesn't need to be contextualize as like a rival, but I definitely did that. Like I did that all the time. I put like when I was just working on stuff, I'd put artists up on my screen off to the side, and I would look at them and be like, is what I'm doing right now anywhere close to that? And if it's not, then don't stop until it's something like that, my best version of that. I did that a lot.
I mean, Dave literally messaged Marco Derjovic and said, "I'm coming for you." When we were like 17, he just reached out to him and was like, "I'm gonna be better than you someday. I'm coming for you." And he was like, "Ha ha ha, young man."
Well,
And there he goes.
what I actually said was I asked him how long do you think it would take based off my current portfolio to become a professional artist, and Marco said like probably around 5 years or something like that. Or I asked him how long it would take me to become a working artist, and he said probably around 5 years, and I just responded and I said that I'm going to do it in 2, and that was my response to it.
Hilarious.
And he really liked it because he remembered it like way later. He was like, "Wait, that was you?" And I
Hey,
was like, "Yes, it was."
if you're a person that responds really well to embarrassment or shame as a motivator, reach out to someone you respect and tell them you'll be a professional in 3 years. Because then if you're not, boy, do you look bad.
Well, I didn't feel that way.
I know you didn't. I'm just saying for people that do. It's like those people that are like, I took a photo of myself naked and gave it to my friend and told him to put it online if I don't lose 100 pounds in a year. It's like the same stupid motivation. Let's see. I'm building a portfolio of game, fan art, and dark fantasy sci-fi characters. Is this targeted enough to find work? It depends what kind of work you're trying to find. I mean, if you're trying to work for those game companies, possibly.
Yeah, it just depends on who, really. And it's like, and how generic is what you're talking about? Because if you're saying it like it's, I'm only working within this genre, then, it's like, what are you basing things off of? Like, what is your creative process? Like, here's one use for AI, by the way, which I thought would be interesting. If you're trying to come up with stuff, use ChatGPT as a way to basically create your own version of those old concept creation things. So like, give me a ton of ideas for character concepts that are, you know, underwater civilization, Mayan based, whatever you want to do, golems and that live in bubble ships. Like, can you write out like a handful of character prompts based on that, and then just kind of like use that as a springboard to do other things?
Goblin says, okay, art question. Any tips for getting rid of art fatigue? I work out, I'm healthy, but I can't seem to focus more than 2 hours on a painting. First off, get rid of all your distractions and see if that helps. Like, literally put your phone in another room. If you can, shut off your internet, shut off your internet. Like, don't go on YouTube. Like, have a screen time app, and, number one, find out, are you on your phone 10 hours a day? Like, try to do all that stuff first. And if that stuff doesn't help, I don't know. There's other things you can do. I wouldn't suggest medication right off the bat. Some people have very ADHD tendencies.
Yeah, if you're exercising all the time and you're pushing yourself in that regard, and you feel like you're pretty healthy, then it's just a matter of discipline. And I think like just having it be a thing where you say, I'm going to do this today. Like, have like a set goal of what you're going to do, accomplish in that day. And then, have it be like bare minimum stuff. Have it not even be like super demanding of you. Something that's possible. Like the equivalent for writers is that thing we've talked about before of like, just get a page a day done. Just write one absolutely shitty page a day. Like, I think that that's very applicable to art. It's like, just create a bad piece of art. Just tell yourself, I'm going to do one bad piece of art a day. Some days you'll only do one, but some days that initial starting point will get you to make other stuff.
And even if it doesn't, you can make a novelty book on Kickstarter called 365 Days of Bad Art, and you will make $1 million.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah. Fuzzy whispered, Dan, yes or no, are you talking about the no thing in The Mandalorian? Yes, I am. Thank you for finding a way to ask that without spoiling it. That is exactly what I'm talking about.
So I'm
Any
excited.
future plans for Skull and Shark TV show, 6 minute game, comic? Yeah, we'd love to do it as a book. We have plans. It's changed a lot since we initially did it. We kind of embraced weirder stuff that we want to do with it. I don't know what the timeline for that would be though.
Yeah, it's really just like as soon as Kim and I are in a house, that's going to help a lot because that's mostly been my focus for years now is saving up enough money to be in a house with our family.
Kim says, Dan, does anyone in your family own or have owned a PT Cruiser? No, but my dad owns three, count them three pontoon boats. I think that's at least one PT Cruiser worth of cringe right there. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you end the stream the way you should by doing an impression of this character, saying thank you for coming to these woods, traveler? I
don't
have the
have it in me.
reagents you're looking for.
You can do it.
I'm thinking he sort of sounds like the librarian from Symphony of the Night based on the smile. Where he's like, thank you for coming, traveler. Or something like that.
All right, everybody. Thanks for coming to the stream. Really appreciate
These
it.
woods are cursed.
If you want to see more of this on the Patreon, I'm going to post it in the morning. But yeah, you can join the Patreon in the description below. You see a link there.
This curse, you must find 7 swoon feathers from my familiar.
And yeah, we're going to be doing a challenge. I'll announce that in the next couple days. That'll be on the Patreon as well and the Discord channel. So yeah, hang out.
I may look weak, but my arms are strong as tree branches.
Thanks, everybody. And I'll see you. Well, actually, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're just somebody hanging because we do these every Thursday. So yeah. Later, everybody.
All is green in the woods of dreams.